Enrica reflects deeply as she stands as a bride, and we come to understand that she is now marrying a count who held no role in the original story. Furthermore, this marriage is only a contract meant for a purpose, yet despite that, she feels happier than ever. At the same time, we learn that her fate had once been cruel, as she was meant to be killed by her fiancé on her wedding night, a man named Raphael Kronhart, known as the villain of that story. However, everything changes because Count Cale Belbrington steps in and saves her from that end. Moreover, even though he was never mentioned before, he turns out to be very handsome, which surprises her even more. Because of this, gratitude fills her heart, and she openly appreciates him for accepting the contract, since without him, she would have been forced to become the Duke's bride or to run away. In response, he expresses relief as well, since he managed to meet her before she fled, and this simple reply leaves her feeling flattered, almost dazzled by him. Meanwhile, in the hall, a moderator steps forward with a scroll and begins the formal introduction, announcing the bride as the eldest daughter of the Wintersoar ducal house, Lady Enrica Wintersoar. However, when it is time to introduce the groom, there is a slight pause, and then a long list follows, revealing that he is the Lord of Leon, Calusi, Leone, Matena, and Elaz. Because of this, she turns to him in surprise, quietly wondering if he truly owns that much land. Yet he only smiles in response. Furthermore, the list continues, naming him as the Count of Lucio, Canea, Clive, Hario, Tobinet, and Janos, and also the one overseeing the borders of Lenore and Canard, as well as the commander of the Dawning Knights. As a result, confusion grows within her, since she cannot understand why someone who was supposed to be an extra has such an overwhelming background. Nevertheless, she tries to brush it aside, thinking that as long as he is not the Duke from the original story, then everything is fine. However, just when it seems things are settling, everything changes again as the moderator suddenly announces the arrival of the Sword of the Empire, the Master of Kronhart, Grand Duke Raphael Kronhart. At that moment, shock takes over her completely. And before she can process it, he steps forward, grabs her hand, and calls her his bride while asking if they should leave. Consequently, confusion rises sharply, and she is left trying to understand what is truly happening. Enrica recalls how, just a month ago, she suddenly found herself inside a novel called The Moon Shrouded in Darkness. Moreover, we learn that within this story, there exists a character even more popular than the main leads, a feared villainess, and a hidden mastermind known as the Grand Duke. Furthermore, he is deeply obsessed with the female lead, bound to her by a strange mix of obsession and servitude, creating a connection that almost feels like love. Because of this, readers once found the bond between the cruel man and woman thrilling, even wishing they would end up together despite their evil acts. However, the story itself begins with darkness, as the Grand Duke marries a woman for political gain and then kills her on their wedding night. As if that is not enough, while cleaning up the scene, he meets the villainess, who has been hiding as a maid, and upon noticing her silence after witnessing the crime, he becomes curious. Soon, he discovers her dark magic, and from that moment, they walk a path of evil together. At that time, it was exciting for her as a reader, yet now everything feels different because she realizes that the one meant to be killed is none other than the bride she has become. As if her situation is not already dire, we learn that after arriving in this world, Enrica discovers a painful truth about her life, realizing she has been used by her own family from the start. In addition, when her body grows weak and her magic fades, they arrange her marriage to the Grand Duke as if they are selling her off. Because of this, she looks at her frail state and wonders just how far she has been pushed. Just then, the moment shifts as her father bursts into the room, demanding to know if the rumors about her lost magic are true. At that point, she lifts the cloth in her hand and accepts it, admitting that her body has reached its limit while apologizing. In response, Duke Wintersoar explodes in anger, calling her useless and a burden, even claiming that beasts in the duchy are more valuable than her. Consequently, we understand that this man sees his own daughter as nothing more than a tool for magic. Even so, she begs for time, promising to find a way to regain her power, which causes him to calm slightly, though he still insults her by saying it is shameful for her to attend a banquet under the family name. Because of this, a small hope rises within her, wishing she will not be sent there. Yet that hope is crushed as he orders her to prepare, since it will be her first outing after receiving the Grand Duke's proposal. After he leaves, despair fills her again, and she admits she does not want to go, reflecting on how little she can do in this weak body while enduring constant insults. However, before she can finish her thoughts, there is a knock and Sarah enters. At that moment, she forces herself to act naturally, even though she knows this is the very villainess who once watched her die. And with a controlled smile, she welcomes her while preparing to face what comes next. In the next moment, we follow Enrica as she watches Sarah walk closer. And at the same time, she reflects on the one thing she has worked hardest on since taking over this body, winning over the villainess and keeping her pleased. Because of this, she quickly stands and warmly greets her, expressing how much she has missed her. While inside, she reminds herself that one wrong move could cost her everything, even her life, before she ever gets to marry the Duke. As they embrace, Sarah gently urges her to sit, already holding a pair of scissors since there is little time left before the banquet. Soon after, she settles into the chair, yet her thoughts continue, as she cannot help but feel uneasy in front of her, noticing her fiery red hair and sharp eyes, a presence that clearly marks her as dangerous, while she herself feels too soft and easy to push around. Meanwhile, as the work continues, she carefully raises the proposal from the Duke of Kronhart, asking what she thinks. However, the reaction comes on fast and strong as she raises her voice in clear refusal, which makes her flinch before she questions the reason. At that point, doubt creeps into her mind, wondering if this has anything to do with dark magic or something else. Yet, the answer that follows is unexpected, as she speaks about wanting to keep her by her side longer, correcting herself as she claims that her lady is still too young and should experience more of the world with her. Because of this, everything shifts, and she suddenly stands up and pulls her into a tight hug, overwhelmed by the realization that all her efforts have not been wasted. She recalls how she gave her snacks, spared her from hard work, and protected her secrets, all while believing none of it mattered. Yet now she sees that it did. However, the moment does not end there, as she quickly denies that it is the reason, leaving her confused and asking why. In response, she shares something unexpected, explaining that the more she looks at her, the more she reminds her of someone named Lily. This only adds to the confusion, leading her to ask who that is, only to learn it was a puppy she once had as a child, with soft, light fur and a very cute appearance. As a result, she is unsure whether to feel happy. Nevertheless, the moment moves forward as she finishes working on her hair, and when she looks at herself, she is amazed, calling herself beautiful and asking if it looks good. In return, she gives a calm reply, encouraging her to enjoy the moment, since this could be her last banquet before marriage. Consequently, those words land heavily, and shock fills her as the weight of what lies ahead becomes clear. As we follow Enrica toward the banquet hall, we sense her unease grow stronger, and she admits to herself that she cannot relax just because she has won Sarah over. Moreover, she recalls those words about this being her last banquet before marriage, and this thought weighs heavily on her heart. In the hall, we see people gathered, whispering and gossiping, and as soon as they notice her, their words turn sharp and judgmental. She hears them clearly, even when they question why she was chosen, saying she looks decent but has no special charm. Nevertheless, she keeps her composure and approaches a woman, who turns out to be the Countess, who greets her warmly and speaks about the marriage. As a result, the talk quickly shifts to rumors, and she is caught off guard when she hears that everyone already knows. Furthermore, the Countess shares stories about how the Duke could not wait, skipped the engagement, kept their meeting secret, and sent gifts day and night. At this point, we see her thoughts race as she realizes she has never even seen his face, and she begins to connect the strange carriages to these gifts. Consequently, her mind goes deeper, and she starts to suspect a darker plan, thinking she may have been chosen as the perfect scapegoat for murder. In addition, she reasons that her father would not even care enough to investigate, and now that everyone believes the Duke loves her, the plan is complete. As a result, fear takes over, and she wonders if she can survive such a man. The Countess notices her change and calls out concerned, and after a second call, she snaps back, offering an excuse about feeling dizzy from the carriage ride. Because of that, she is advised to rest, and although the Countess is about to share more news, she has already walked away, missing the fact that the Duke is present at the banquet. Meanwhile, as she moves inside the building, her thoughts grow heavier, and she admits that everything is already set, making it almost impossible to break the engagement. Her head begins to hurt, and therefore, she decides to get some fresh air. However, just as she opens the door, she is surprised to find someone already inside. She quickly apologizes for not noticing him, and in response, he calmly reassures her. At that moment, we notice her attention shift as his voice leaves a strong impression on her. Moreover, she reflects on it in a simple yet striking way, thinking that if Winter were a person, it would sound exactly like. As we stay with Enrica in that quiet space, we notice her studying the man closely, and at the same time, her thoughts begin to run. She wonders who he is because he clearly does not look like an extra, especially with how unusually handsome he appears. Moreover, she recalls that the Duke Wintersoar and Sarah came from her original memories, and that she recognized them the moment she opened her eyes after the possession. However, this face is different, and she realizes it does not exist in those memories at all. In addition, she reflects on the novel itself and admits that she has never seen a visual like this, not even in its illustrations. As a result, curiosity pushes her forward, and she asks for his name. Instead of a direct answer, he reacts in a way that makes her feel like she should already know him, and this immediately throws her off. Consequently, she questions his attitude in her mind, wondering why he acts as if he is obvious, even though she cannot place him anywhere. After a short pause, he finally introduces himself as Count Belbrington. In response, she gives her own name as Enrica of the Wintersoar Ducal House, yet even then she cannot recall ever hearing that name before, which leads her to quietly conclude that he is not a main character. Meanwhile, her attention shifts to the table where she notices 2 glasses, and she wonders if he has been waiting for someone. However, he denies it, and instead suggests that he may have been waiting for her without even knowing it. Because of that, The mood changes, and he fills one glass with wine, offering it to her and inviting her to drink with him. She accepts, and at that moment, she finds his calm manner surprising, as he seems smooth in a quiet way. Furthermore, she allows herself to set aside her heavy worries, even if just for a moment, and she admits that spending time at a banquet with a kind and handsome man does not sound so bad. As a result, she gets carried away by the mood and drinks more than she should. Little by little, her guard drops, and she begins to speak more freely, finally admitting that she does not want to get married at all. And even the gifts and jewelry feel like a burden to her. As we remain in this moment, we see Count Belvington listening to Enrica with full attention, and then he gently questions what exactly she dislikes about her fiancé. Moreover, he considers various reasons, wondering whether she was disrespected or whether there are bad rumors about him. However, she pauses, thinking deeply, because she knows she cannot reveal the real reason, that the Duke will kill her in the future. As a result, she holds herself back, aware that such words would only make her seem insane. Instead, she chooses her words carefully and admits that she truly wants to avoid marriage. Furthermore, she lowers her guard slightly and shares a secret, saying she has even thought about running away from the Empire. At that moment, his reaction changes, and suddenly, the glass in his hand breaks. This causes concern, and he quickly checks if she is all right. Nevertheless, his thoughts shift again, and he asks if there is someone she loves. In response, she denies it, explaining that it is not about love at all, and that she would do anything just to avoid marriage. Even so, his strange reaction does not go unnoticed by her. Meanwhile, he continues to question her, trying to understand if she dislikes her fiancé alone or the idea of marriage itself. However, she makes it clear that marriage is not the problem, only that specific person is. As a result, he lets out a small laugh and admits that the situation is hard to understand, yet he offers a simple solution. Instead of being tied to that man, she could simply marry someone else. This idea surprises her, yet it also makes sense. Consequently, she begins to think quickly, realizing that since she has not accepted the Duke's proposal yet, marrying another man before the deadline could save her. She agrees it is a good idea, though she doubts she can find someone in time. In response, he reassures her with confidence, saying that someone like her would have many people willing to take her hand. Then, for a brief moment, his expression changes and he mutters something under his breath, yet she does not catch it and asks him to repeat himself. He brushes it off, saying it is nothing. After that, we see her thoughts turn inward again, as she reflects on his suggestion. A marriage of convenience seems like the perfect solution, yet she quickly realizes a problem. She has no one to turn to, no friends, and not even a close acquaintance. Moreover, she remembers how her father kept her identity as a magician, hidden, leaving her isolated. Even so, she refuses to give up, because to her, this is a matter of survival. Just then, as if a spark lights up in her mind, an idea forms. Immediately, she turns back to Count Belvington, reaches out, and holds his hand without hesitation. And in that sudden moment, she asks him if he would be willing to marry her. As we watch Enrica take that bold step, we immediately feel her doubt rush in, and she questions herself, wondering if she has gone mad. Moreover, she admits to herself that she spoke without thinking, yet she quickly steadies herself, deciding that now it is all or nothing. As a result, she looks at Count Belvington again and asks for his help, promising that the marriage will only last 1 year. Furthermore, she explains that she has nothing to offer now, but she will find a way to compensate him later. She says all this while still holding his hand, yet just as she finishes, he pulls away. At that moment, her heart sinks, and she believes she has been rejected. However, before that feeling settles, he takes her hand again and interlocks his fingers with hers, calmly accepting and saying he has been waiting for this. This shocks her, and she quickly questions what he means, wondering if he has been waiting for the reward or the divorce. Instead, he clarifies that he has been waiting for the proposal itself. Consequently, she becomes even more confused, and as she lets go of his hand, she cannot understand how he agrees so easily. In her thoughts, she questions if she is dreaming, and in disbelief, she places both hands on her face and shakes her head. Immediately, he stops her, gently pulling her hands away and warning her not to hurt herself. Meanwhile, she regains focus and expresses her gratitude, yet she brings up another problem: her father. She worries that he may not approve, especially after already receiving gifts from the Duke. And because of that, she avoids meeting his gaze. In response, he assures her that he can handle it and urges her to focus on becoming his bride. However, she raises yet another concern, explaining that the proposal has already spread across high society. This causes him to pause, and he admits that this is indeed the biggest issue. Then, without hesitation, he suggests that they go straight to the temple and make their vows at once. She looks at him in surprise and questions if such a thing is truly possible, yet he simply asks her to trust him. Although she feels it may just be empty confidence, those words still bring her a sense of calm. As a result, he reaches out his hand and invites her to go with him, declaring that they will show everyone at the banquet that she has chosen another man. She accepts, placing her hand in his, and they walk back into the hall together. At that moment, she becomes aware of the eyes around them, realizing how shocking this must look, as someone who was proposed to by a duke now walks hand in hand with another man. Sensing her unease, he reassures her not to be nervous, reminding her that he is by her side. She responds with thanks, yet suddenly remembers something important and asks for his full name. Instead of answering right away, he pulls her closer in front of everyone and embraces her, leaving the crowd in shock. Then, at last, he gives a simple answer. He asks her to call him Kyle. As the banquet comes to an end, we follow Enrica and Raphael Kronhart as they stand outside, and immediately, we sense her unease. She thinks to herself that if she stays any longer, her heart may not endure it, and as a result, she prepares to leave. She assures him she can return on her own since her family's carriage brought her, yet she reminds him to keep his promise to come find her. In response, he accepts this with ease, even pointing out that after what she did in front of everyone, it is only natural. And now he claims the place of her lover. This surprises her, and she thinks he is quite bold, yet she steps into the chariot and prepares to leave, addressing him as Kyle. Just then, he calls out, saying he feels fortunate to have met her, and she returns the sentiment before the carriage moves away, leaving him behind. Meanwhile, as the scene shifts, Malua arrives and calls out to Raphael Kronhart, clearly having searched for him for a long time. However, what follows shocks us, as he calmly states that he is no longer a duke but now Count Kyle Belbrington, warning him to be careful with titles. This sudden change leaves the assistant confused, yet he listens as the plan unfolds. He explains the need to create a clear identity in the capital, and furthermore, reveals that Enrica does not know who he truly is. This leads to a brief reflection, where it becomes clear she failed to recognize him and even asked for his name. In response, it is reasoned that this is not strange, since he avoids banquets and formal appearances, while her life has been tightly controlled, leaving her unaware of many things around her. Nevertheless, he gives a firm order to keep all guests silent about what happened, making it clear that from now on he will live as Count Kyle Belbrington. Even though Melua seeks a full explanation, he remains quiet for a moment before revealing the truth, expressing his strong need to keep her close, even if it means carrying out a bold and risky plan. As Enrica arrives home, we follow her quiet steps as she announces her return, yet no one comes to greet her, and this makes us realize how used she already is to such cold treatment. Nevertheless, she accepts it, even thinking it is better this way, since all she wants is to reach her room, remove her makeup, and rest. However, just then, her father's servant appears and calls her to the study, saying the master is waiting. This makes her wonder why, but the servant gives no answer, and instead comments that she at least looks presentable now, also noting that the Grand Duke attended the banquet and questioning whether she greeted him properly. As a result, when she enters the study and meets her father, she senses something strange in his tone, as if he is judging her, and this unsettles her. Moreover, when she hears again that the Grand Duke was present, fear rises within her, as she quickly realizes he may have seen everything. And this thought leads her into panic, thinking she might die before she even gets the chance to marry Kyle. Even so, she decides to act calm and play along, confirming that she met and greeted him, which seems to satisfy him. In response, he instructs her to maintain her appearance and begins arranging her bridal training, saying she is finally proving her worth and reminding her that whatever benefits the family will also benefit her. At this moment, she notices that his gaze is not as cold as before, and this gives her a small sense of hope, leading her to believe she might be able to persuade him. However, as she carefully brings up the idea of not wanting to marry the Grand Duke, everything changes in an instant. Without warning, he calls her name and strikes her hard across the face, his anger clear as he scolds her for speaking such nonsense and orders her to leave, warning that next time it will be worse. Consequently, as she walks out of the study, we feel her shock as she realizes she never expected things to turn out this way. Later, we are taken into Enrica's room, where Sarah is arranging the bed, and just then, the door opens as Enrica walks in. Immediately, she notices how late she is and quickly rushes to her side, helping her sit down. Then, she brings up a story from the past, asking if she remembers the one about her old dog. This leads her to recall Lily, and she begins to explain that, when she was little, the dog once went out alone and returned badly hurt. Some local dogs had been angry because she refused to spend time with them, so they took it out on the dog, yet she made it clear they would never do such a thing again. Hearing this, Enrica thinks about how no one in their right mind would dare harm something that belongs to someone like her. Furthermore, as she continues, she compares herself to that same injured dog, which makes Enrica reflect deeply, realizing that even though she is known as a villain, she is different because she can always feel her care. Afterward, she stands and advises her to lock her door at night, which leads to a small exchange as Enrica explains she left it open because of the heat, yet she quickly responds that there had been a thief, adding that she dealt with him the moment she saw him. This shocks her. Yet before she can dwell on it, the topic shifts to her marriage. When she says she is getting married, she assumes it is to the Grand Duke. However, the truth surprises her, as she reveals it is someone she met at the banquet. This causes clear shock, leading to many questions about the man, his life, and everything about him. In response, Enrica explains that his name is Cale Belbrington, that he is a count, very tall, and the most handsome man she has ever seen. However, she reacts strongly, warning her that tall men are the worst and that handsome ones are often deceivers. Despite this, Enrica laughs and expresses her wish to introduce him to her, believing it may ease her worries, yet she refuses at first before saying she will reconsider. As they sit together, she finally admits her fear is not doubt but concern that she might get hurt, and this moves Enrica to hug her, realizing that what once felt like fear has now turned into trust, seeing her as a strong older sister. In the end, as they remain together, she urges her not to sleep on the chair but to go to bed properly. When asked if she is embarrassed, she simply brushes it off, saying she is only heavy from leaning on her, and asks her to return to bed. The next day, we are taken to Duke Winston's residence, where Sarah appears visibly worried about the bruise on Enrica's face. However, in response, Enrica calmly tells her not to worry and insists that everything is fine, even moving past her while advising that it should be left as it is for the day. At the same time, she adds that the person who caused the injury will be made to pay 100 times over, so there is no need for concern. Hearing this, she quietly concludes that Enrica does not truly mean it and is only speaking out of emotion, yet it still does not feel like a joke at all. Furthermore, this creates a tense mood that lingers between them. Just then, one of the maids enters and informs Enrica that Lady Marta has invited her for tea in the garden. It is also explained that this maid is Marta's closest servant. As we are reminded, Marta is her younger sister, who is loved by everyone in the mansion, unlike her, who is not sociable and struggles to connect with others. In addition, Marta is known for her sweet nature, which easily charms both servants and nobles, giving her a strong reputation. However, despite this image, she has always shown hostility toward her, often humiliating her in secret ways, especially by spreading strange rumors among the servants, which eventually causes her to be seen as a wicked sister jealous of her sibling. Because of this, she recalls past moments of discrimination, including an incident where she was made to change her path when Marta was out walking, and another where a dress was shown for her to wear, only for Marta to reject it and question where it came from, with Sarah also reacting in her own way. As a result of all these experiences, she becomes suspicious of the sudden tea invitation, thinking there must be a hidden plan behind it. Meanwhile, Sarah immediately steps forward and asks the maid to inform the other side that Enrica is not feeling well and cannot attend. However, the maid firmly replies that refusing the invitation would be considered rude. In response, Enrica reflects on Sarah's reliability and recognizes her as the only person truly on her side in the entire house. Consequently, she thanks her, but then decides otherwise, stating that although being outside might worsen her injured face, it would still be better to attend the tea. When Sarah asks if she is truly going, she confirms and begins preparing. Finally, she thinks to herself that she does not know what excuse Marta will use this time in front of their father, so it is safer to simply go along with it for now. In the garden, we see Marta already seated at the table sipping tea, and just then Enrica arrives and walks toward her from behind. Immediately, the younger sister speaks sharply, saying the elder acted proud but still showed up anyway, while noticing the bruise on her face and thinking to herself how satisfying it is to see her hurt. As Sarah helps Enrica sit down, she suddenly raises her voice, saying, "Even if it was their father, this was too much." And this reaction makes Enrica question her attitude. Furthermore, she turns to Sarah, asking why her sister looks like that and whether she took proper care of her. However, Enrica keeps wondering why she is putting pressure on Sarah instead. In response, Sarah explains that Enrica should be fine since the ointment was already applied the previous day. But the younger sister continues by asking if she is sure, even worrying about a possible scar. Because of that, Sarah firmly replies that if anything like that happens, she will make sure the Duke ends up with the same mark. However, Enrica quickly calls her back, and telling her not to worry and that she will handle it herself, then asks her to bring pie from the kitchen, thinking it would be nice to have it with tea. She agrees before leaving. As soon as she is gone, Enrica enjoys the brief quiet while the younger sister changes the topic, mocking her about the banquet and asking if she only ended up decorating the walls, insisting she has always been like that. This causes confusion, and when questioned, she pretends innocence and claims concern instead. Moreover, she mentions that their father said she met the Grand Duke, commenting on his appearance, while Enrica simply says she is not sure, thinking it is because they have never met properly. However, the conversation turns darker as the younger sister speaks about the Grand Duke being a murderer who killed his own family, sees the Grand Duchy, and is extremely violent, even saying he enjoys hurting women when drunk. On hearing this, Enrica thinks she is only trying to scare her, especially since she already knows about his future intention to kill his bride. Still, she calmly says she is fine, but this only makes the younger sister more angry as she raises her voice, insisting she will suffer in marriage, be beaten every day, and asking how she cannot be afraid. Just then, as tension builds, Enrica stays silent, and before anything else can be said, someone suddenly approaches from behind the younger sister, and she turns in confusion, asking why there is no response. At that moment, Enrica is shocked because the person standing there is Kyle. Marta continues speaking without noticing the person behind her, questioning Enrica about her expression and saying she looks like she has seen a ghost. Just then, she turns around and sees Kyle, and she's instantly shocked and frozen in place. Meanwhile, Enrica watches her closely and tries to understand why she reacts like that, even wondering if they know each other. Before anyone can say more, Kyle walks straight to Enrica and says he misses her. In response, she calls him by name and asks why he is there, and he reminds her that he promised to meet her soon. However, she replies that even so, it is too soon and asks how he even got into the Duke's residence. He simply explains that he revealed his identity and came in, and the gatekeeper was polite. On hearing this, she becomes confused, questioning who he really is. Nevertheless, he calmly changes the topic and invites her for a walk in the garden, saying it feels like a good day for it. As a result, Enrica agrees and takes his hand, thinking that if they stay any longer, her father might notice them. While they walk away, she looks back at Marta and says it should be fine to leave her there, even though she feels unsure inside. Marta remains standing in shock, and only after they leave does she mutter to herself, worried and confused, admitting she did not mean it and was only jealous. Later, as Enrica and Kyle walk through the garden, she asks how he knows her sister since she seemed very surprised. He replies that he met her a few years ago at a banquet when he stopped someone from gossiping, adding that it makes sense she reacted the way she did. However, Enrica still feels her reaction was too strong. Then he asks if she believes the rumors about the Duke. On hearing this, she recalls that Duke Kronhart had little background in the original novel, with no details about his past or family, making him very secretive. Although he was known as a villain, she did not expect rumors about him drinking and harming women. Soon after, Enrica realizes she has been thinking too much and turns to him, saying she does not believe unverified facts, and that is not the reason she is avoiding the marriage. He takes her hand again and asks if that is true. She then explains that if her father learns she is trying to refuse the marriage, he will become very angry again. In response, he asks about the bruise on her face, gently touching it, and says he did not let her go yesterday just to see her like this. This causes her to feel embarrassed, and she thinks her family situation is being exposed. Laughing slightly, she asks if he would believe she simply tripped and got hurt. He stays silent for a moment and then says that if that is what she wants, he will believe it. This leaves her surprised, and she wonders why he looks more affected than she does, even though she was the one who got slapped. However, he adds that he cannot leave it like that and must take action, leaving her to wonder exactly what he means. Immediately, Kyle blows a whistle, and horses pulling a chariot quickly arrive where they are standing. Without wasting time, he asks Enrica to get on, but she is shocked and asks how it is so sudden and where they even came from. In response, he calmly says she should not expect him to leave her there after seeing the slap mark on her face, and he tells her to go to his house with him. On hearing this, Enrica is shocked and immediately tells him to wait, asking how he can suggest she go to a count's residence right now. He replies by asking if there is any real reason she cannot, reminding her that they have already promised to marry. However, she explains that there are still practical issues, since she has not even spoken to her father yet. But Kale remains firm and repeats that he will handle that part, adding that if she stays here, she will only keep clashing with her father, so it is better for her to stay at his house instead. Enrica admits that it makes sense, but she says she has not even packed. Before she can continue, he tells her not to worry. Just then, she hears footsteps behind her and turns around, only to see Sarah holding her luggage. Sarah calmly says everything has already been taken care of and that she packed carefully, so nothing is missing. Enrica is shocked again and asks what is going on, remembering that Sarah was supposed to get the pie and she cannot understand how everything is already ready. Meanwhile, Kyle simply says that if that is the case, then all problems are solved, and they should leave now. As a result, Enrica tries again to stop them, saying it is still too sudden since they only met yesterday. However, Kale responds by asking, what if it is not their first meeting? This causes her eyes to widen, and she immediately questions what he means, asking if he is saying they met before the banquet. He replies that she will find out in time as she stays by his side. Then he stretches out his hand toward her and tells her to come with him, adding that just as she needs him, he also needs her desperately. Hearing this, Enrica slowly places her hand in his, and together they leave. Inside the moving chariot, Enrica is asleep, and Kyle gently lets her rest her head on his shoulder as the journey continues. Meanwhile, Sarah breaks the silence, clearly unsettled, asking what on earth is going on and questioning why someone like her is being taken along even though she has never even met him before. In response, a flashback appears, showing Enrica earlier asking Kyle to bring Sarah along as well. Back in the present, Kyle calmly replies that this is what Enrica wanted, but he also adds that it seems Sarah never planned to let Enrica go alone either. Sarah then explains that she followed because it is still better than staying in the Duke's mansion, but she still does not trust him and directly questions his true reason for deceiving Enrica and marrying her, especially since he is Duke Kronhart. However, Kale reacts with cold calmness, calling her words laughable and pointing out that they are deceiving each other in their own way. Furthermore, he adds that someone like her, a dark wizard wanted across the Empire, has no right to say such things. On hearing this, Sarah's eyes widen, and she stands up quickly, shouting in shock about how he knows. He immediately tells her to stay quiet since Enrica is sleeping and might wake up. Then, he continues in a firm tone, saying he understands her worry, but he has no intention of letting even a single hair on Enrica's head be harmed, adding that she is the only one who can save him. Later, when they arrive at the Duke's palace, Kyle welcomes Enrica to his home, and she wakes up shocked, staring at the massive building in front of her. She thinks to herself how unbelievably rich he must be, wondering if it is normal for a noble mansion to be this extravagant, especially with peacocks moving around the grounds. As the moment continues, a messenger from Kyle quietly approaches and whispers about an urgent matter regarding the recent monster hunt. That evening, during dinner, he asks Enrica if the food suits her taste, and she confirms that everything is delicious, although she quickly shifts the topic and asks him for the real reason he accepted her proposal, pointing out how strangely fast he agreed to the fake marriage, and also questioning what he meant when he said he desperately needed her. Immediately after, Kale stands up and moves closer before suddenly kneeling in front of her. Enrica is shocked as he takes her hand, places it against his chest, and her surprise deepens as she realizes she cannot feel anything there. In response, he explains calmly that she just noticed it, but he does not have a heart because he is cursed. She quickly pulls her hand away in shock, while he continues explaining that without a heart, his body is no different from a corpse, and he is only moving it with mana. Furthermore, he reminds her of his earlier words about meeting her before, and although she first assumes he means the banquet after she possessed Enrica's body, he corrects her by saying it was actually at House Meleda's ball. He explains that when he saw her from afar that night, he felt something he had never felt before, even though he had no heart, as if it was beating strongly for the first time. Because of that moment, he realized she was the only one who could uncover the truth behind his curse. Hearing this, Enrica carefully asks what will happen if the curse is not broken, and in response, he gently holds her hair and reveals that he has only 1 year left, and if the curse is not lifted within that time, he will die. Later, Enrica is seen lying on the bed as she replays Kyle's words in her mind. He had said he has only 1 year left to keep his body running with magic, and if he fails to break the curse in time, he will die. As those thoughts suddenly fill her mind, she quickly sits up and begins thinking deeply, reasoning that she went through so much just to secure this marriage. As a result, she realizes that if Kale dies, her father will surely send her back to the Grand Duke. Even beyond that, she cannot simply allow him to die. She feels uneasy and asks herself if there is anything she can do. Since it is a curse, it must be related to magic, but her own magic is already very weak, so her options are limited. Furthermore, she suddenly remembers something from the novel. Enrica was always accompanied by a familiar named Vermont, who takes the form of a cat. He lived with her in the desolate beach where she had no one else to rely on, and he was the only one she could truly call a friend. According to what she remembers from the story, a familiar can only return to the demon realm under 2 conditions. Either if the contract with their master is broken, or if the master dies. Because of that, she quickly reasons that she is still alive and does not remember breaking any contract, which means Vermont may still be somewhere in the beach. Moreover, since familiars are demons, she thinks breaking a curse should not be too difficult for him. Immediately after this thought, she gets up, planning to find a carriage and return to the beach. As she walks through the hallway thinking about this plan, she looks up and notices the Duke's messenger approaching. She recognizes him as Kale's aide and calls out to him for help. In response, he greets her and asks how he can assist. She explains that she left something important at home and asks if she can return to pick it up. However, he immediately refuses, saying the Count is currently away on a campaign, and if he finds out she left while he is gone, he will be in serious trouble and may even die. Enrica becomes confused, wondering why he would say something like that, since Kyle does not seem like that kind of person. The messenger quickly adds that it is only her imagination if she thinks otherwise. She then repeats that it is very important and asks whether there is truly no way. After a short pause, he finally agrees, but only on the condition that he will accompany her. Hearing this, she thanks him, and he is identified as Manhwa as they prepare to leave together. When they arrive, Manhwa tells Enrica that they have reached their destination. As she steps out of the chariot, she cannot help but think that it is hard to believe she is back here only a day after running away. Meanwhile, Manhwa reminds her that she must return before sunset and asks her to make that promise. In response, she agrees to come back in time. Immediately after, she enters the mansion, and upon seeing the maids moving around as usual, she quickly hides and observes, thinking that even after she disappeared with Kale like that, the mansion's atmosphere has not changed at all. As a result, she concludes that Marta must not have settled things at all. Furthermore, she glances up at the window and sees her father, and she thinks that even he, along with the Grand Duke, who she expected to be angry, remains quiet, making her wonder if deep down no one truly cares what happens to her. Just then, she hears a maid calling out about a cute cat, saying that it has been appearing a lot lately and is simply too adorable. Enrica looks over and sees the cat. And when another maid tries to touch it, the cat immediately runs away, causing her to comment in surprise that such a small creature is so fierce. At that moment, she reasons that it could be him and wonders if she has really found what she is looking for so easily. So she decides she must follow it. As the cat runs, she chases after it, calling out for it to wait, but it keeps moving and eventually enters another room. She is surprised that it looks back at her, yet she still follows it inside, even though she knows the room has been abandoned for a long time and there are even rumors of ghosts. She recognizes it as the late Duchess's chamber and realizes that it was her mother's room. While coughing from the dust, she notices strange objects on the table that look like magic experiment tools. She then reads several book titles, including Theory of Teleportation Magic, The Essentials of Summoning Magic, and a book about making potions, which makes her realize they are all related to magic. Because of that, she wonders if the Duchess was a mage, and if so, it would make sense why Enrica, who was originally just a minor character, has magic. She concludes that she must have inherited her mother's magic. Meanwhile, the cat sits on a shelf and moves a book, and she quickly warns it not to, but it ignores her and knocks the book into her face. She picks it up and reads the title, Vivian Montimer's Diary, and at that moment, a strange feeling suddenly spreads through her body, causing her to question what is happening. Just then, she hears footsteps approaching the door and realizes someone is coming, and two maids arrive outside. One warns the other that the late Duchess's room is off limits, while the other says she heard a woman's voice mumbling earlier. However, when they open the door, they find no one inside and assume there is no one there before leaving. Later, Enrica is seen outside with leaves in her hair and clothes, and Melua notices her and asks if she is all right. She confirms that she is fine and thanks him, explaining that she escaped through a window by the tree. He then asks whether she came for a cat, and she wonders whether he would even allow animals. She then explains that the cat feels like family to her, and that she wants to bring it with her, if possible. In response, he agrees, saying that if it is her wish, the Count would allow it, but he also notices a scratch on her face. She insists it is fine and urges them to hurry back, and he agrees, asking her to get it treated once they return. They both get into the chariot and leave. Inside, Enrica looks at the cat and thinks that she brought it without thinking, but now she needs to confirm if it is really a familiar. She decides to try speaking to it and softly calls out to it, even noting to herself that it is at least cute. Suddenly, the cat responds in a human voice, calling her an idiot and asking what she is looking at, leaving her in complete shock. Enrica suddenly gets up in shock as she hears a cat speak, realizing with disbelief that it is actually talking. The cat immediately tells her to be quiet and insists that it is not a cat but Count Vermont, a great demon who has lived for 400 years. It then asks for her name. In response, she is shocked that it does not know who she is and questions how that is even possible, while the cat replies that it has no reason to know her identity. As confusion builds, she thinks to herself that something is strange and wonders if this has something to do with her reincarnation into this world. She then identifies herself as Enrica Wintersour, the eldest daughter of that family. But the cat responds that it does not even remember being at that mansion and that the person who summoned it disappeared long ago, rendering the contract null. Because of that, the magical bond weakens so much that even the summoner's face is now forgotten. Enrica feels even more confused, thinking something is clearly off, yet at the same time, she feels an odd sense of familiarity with it. The cat then asks why she brought it there, confirming she must want something, and she immediately explains that her fiancé has been cursed, and she wants the curse removed, hoping it knows how. Furthermore, the cat rejects this immediately, and says it does not know how to lift such a curse, explaining that even powerful familiars cannot easily undo another person's curse, and that the fastest method would be to go directly to the one who cast it. Enrica admits that it is obvious and frustrating since such a solution is impossible, while the cat adds that although rare cases exist where magical tools can break curses, they are extremely dangerous. It then shares an old case from 100 years ago, where a man who angered a dark sorcerer was cursed with a body that rotted, and after long searching, he found a scale-shaped magical tool kept in a noble family. However, the tool demanded a price equal to the value of the cure, and in the end, the man sacrificed his own eyes to break the curse, only to later take his own life in despair. Because of this, the cat warns that getting involved with curses always ends in tragedy, and urges her to break off her engagement as soon as possible. Enrica then asks where that scale is now, and she is stunned when the answer comes that it is inside the same Wintersour family she just left, leaving her in complete shock. As they step into Duke Kronhardt's mansion, the cat looks around and comments that it is a very nice place, asking if this is her fiancé's house, and even saying that the place feels like somewhere people settle down and have children. Enrica, however, thinks to herself that nothing about this situation makes sense, since she had only just left the Duke's mansion after so much trouble. Yet the magical item needed to break the curse is now linked to the Wintersall family home. Because of that confusion, she turns to the cat and asks where exactly that magical artifact might be inside the mansion. In response, it explains that it does not know the exact location, but the feeling of that artifact from 100 years ago still lingers within the mansion, so it only suspects it is there. Furthermore, since it is an important item, it must be hidden in a difficult-to-find place. However, it adds that it is far from its contractor, so its magic is very weak right now, meaning it cannot properly detect the artifact. To do that, it first needs to restore its magic by staying close to strong magical energy, preferably with a mage. Enrica then quickly asks it to form a contract with her, but it looks at her in surprise and reminds her that it said it needs strong magic, because with her current level, she can barely lift a feather. As a result, she realizes she has lost access to her magic, yet it then adds that if the magical binding on her is broken, the situation would be different. Confused, she asks what it means, and it explains that she has not truly lost her magic, but it is being blocked by a binding spell, which is why she cannot use it. Enrica's eyes widen as she asks if breaking that binding would allow her to regain her magic, and it replies that there is a possibility. It then tells her to check the notebook she brought, saying it carries the scent of her magic and could be a clue to restoring it. Later on, Enrica is seen sitting at a table reading the notebook. Inside, she reads that on the day she first met Duke Kronhart, he treated her kindly and called her presence humble, unlike others who feared her as a mage. As she continues, she reads about how happy she was to be marrying him, yet Enrica stops and thinks that this meeting between a duke and a future duchess feels strangely rushed, as if days are missing. While turning the pages, she finds another paper and reads about Vivian Montemore, the daughter of a marquis and a sorceress, whose life becomes filled with pain as she is used and exploited by the duke despite her kindness and guilt. The story continues in a flashback where Vivian, after becoming pregnant with the duke's child, hopes for happiness, but instead sees him with another woman. When she confronts him, he coldly rejects her, saying the marriage was never about love and that she should stop clinging to him. Later, the woman linked to him gives birth to a child named Marta, and Vivian loses all hope, only wishing Enrica would not be hurt. Eventually, Vivian is accused of causing the other woman's death in a carriage accident using magic, leading to her imprisonment and torture until her body weakens beyond repair. Near her final moments, she meets a child and uses her remaining magic to place a seal on that child's power at the age of 18, hoping that the child will one day understand the value of magic and use it only for love. After finishing the diary, Enrica feels tears rise as she realizes she is not truly Vivian's real daughter, yet the emotions feel real and heavy. Overcome with emotion, she accepts that Vivian's pain, loneliness, and love for her were real, and she quietly promises that she will no longer follow the Duke's will. Just then, a strange sensation passes between her and the book, leaving her deeply shaken. In the morning, Enrica wakes up still on the table, slowly trying to understand if she had actually passed out the night before. As she turns, she sees Vermont and immediately questions what on earth he did to her. In response, he explains that she has actually regained her magic. On hearing this, she freezes and thinks to herself that her magic has returned, and as she focuses inward, she feels an overwhelming flow of mana inside her body. Because of that, she becomes unsure if it is truly real, wondering if she really got her magic back. Suddenly, Enrica stands up and slams the table, insisting that they should form a contract immediately, saying the amount of magic she now has should be enough. However, Vermont immediately stops her and says it is still too early because he needs to confirm something first. He then asks if she still wants to break her fiancé's curse. Enrica starts to answer yes, but before she can finish, he turns away and refuses to form a contract at all, saying he has no intention of getting involved with something like a curse. Furthermore, he adds that if it were about grand ambition, such as ultimate power or world domination, it would be different. But not this. He then declares that if she will not change her goal, he will return to the demon realm. Enrica tells him to wait, but quickly thinks to herself that he is trying to back out. In response, she calmly tells him to do as he wishes, but then questions whether he even has enough magic to open a portal back. She reminds him that he himself said he needs constant exposure to strong mana from a contractor to recover his power, and that is exactly why he followed her. Because of that, she points out that he is the one who actually needs her right now. On hearing this, Vermont becomes furious and shouts at her, demanding to know if she is threatening him. Enrica calmly replies that it is not a threat, but only facts, and tells him to think it over carefully. Later, Enrica sits down to a meal with Kyle, and he casually mentions that he heard she took in a stray cat while he was away, commenting that he did not know she was the type to raise animals. As he sips his tea, she thinks to herself that she wants to explain it as familiar, but realizes it would sound even worse if she said it out loud. Meanwhile, she reflects that although she has regained her magic, her mind is still full of confusion, and she does not know what to do next. She decides that she must first search for clues about the magical artifact that can grant a wish. However, before she can continue her thoughts, Kale gently feeds her a strawberry with his fork. In that moment, she quickly shifts the topic and asks him to allow her to attend the upcoming masquerade ball at Macrosis. His eyes widen in surprise, and he questions whether there is any need to step into the dangerous world of nobles when she already has a comfortable life at home. Enrica notices his hesitation and decides to use her emotional words, mentioning how her father used to say the same thing about women not going outside, and how she once thought her life would finally change after leaving home. Hearing this, Kale immediately reassures her that he did not mean to restrict her, calling her impossible and eventually agreeing. He then adds that if she is going to a ball, she will need a dress, and suggests that they visit a boutique together after lunch. Later that day, Enrica and Kyle arrive at a boutique, and she looks around before saying that the place looks ridiculously expensive, asking if this is not too much. In response, he calmly says she should not worry about it and should just pick what she likes. Just then, a man walks out from inside and says he has been expecting the master, showing clear respect. This immediately leads into a flashback 10 minutes earlier, in which Manhwa warns him not to ask any questions when the Highness arrives, and to always address him as Count, or else everyone could die. Returning to the present, the same man quickly corrects himself and addresses Kale as Count, saying it is an honor to have him there in person. Meanwhile, Enrica looks unsettled but tries to focus as she says there are many beautiful dresses and she does not know which one to choose. Kale responds calmly that it is a difficult choice and asks for recommendations for his fiancée. The staff begins presenting dresses, including one made by an artisan from a distant land, saying a bright color would suit her pink hair. Enrica agrees she likes it and chooses it. However, Kale suddenly suggests a soft gray blue instead, saying it would look more elegant, and asks for a thinner fabric, while the staff explains that the material is imported and comfortable. As more designs are shown, one lady adds that a certain style is trending in the Imperial Palace. At that point, Enrica calls out to Kyle, saying they are only buying one dress and asking if they really need to go through all of this, but he responds that they need at least 30 dresses, one for every occasion. Enrica is shocked and says one dress is enough, and the rest would be a waste. But he insists it is not wasteful, and explains that trying them on means she will think of him each time. After this, the dresses are packed, and he requests that all 30 be sent to the Count's residence. He then thanks her for coming along and asks her to step outside for some fresh air while he settles the bill. She agrees. Outside, Enrica looks at the guard and wonders how rich Kyle is to buy so many dresses at once. But before she can think further, Marta suddenly appears and calls out, saying they need to talk. Enrica is seen confronting Marta, who appears without warning. Immediately, Enrica questions why Marta is here. However, Marta responds without hesitation that she has something to say and questions if she is not allowed to come. In response, Enrica makes it clear that there is nothing to discuss and instructs her to leave, then turns away to walk off. Nevertheless, Marta calls out to her, insisting she only wants to talk. But before anyone can properly react, Kyle pulls Marta toward him. As a result, the guards instantly draw their swords against Marta, while Kyle, clearly angry, points out that forcing someone away from a person they are already with is discourteous. Marta quickly insists she only came to talk, yet tension rises sharply. Meanwhile, Elika realizes Kale is truly furious and immediately steps in, assuring him that she will handle the situation and send Marta away while he checks if she is certain she will be all right. Even so, Elika, worried, asks him to wait a moment for her. Furthermore, both Elika and Enrica move inside, where they meet Marta seated at a table, and Elika demands to know what she so desperately needs to say. At that point, Marta asks whether Enrica truly intends to never return home, which immediately prompts Enrica to wonder whether their father is very angry. In response, Marta explains that their father says it is only hastening what was already inevitable. Consequently, Enrica is left questioning whether there truly is no message from him, and whether she has been abandoned just like that. As the conversation continues, Marta admits she found Enrica's diary in her room, which contains painful entries describing how she was treated like a slave by the Duke, including repeated violence, verbal abuse, and exploitation. Hearing this, Marta stutters and says she had no idea their father was that cruel. Yet Enrica questions whether this is true remorse. Then, Enrica confronts her directly, stating that Marta was never ignorant but simply chose to stay blind, adding that she is no different from their father and has long contributed to her isolation through rumors spread among servants. Just when the situation seems to escalate further, Marta slams the table and stands up, raising her voice as she begins to blame Enrica in relation to their mother, but she is cut off when Enrica clarifies that she's referring to the Duke's mistress. Shocked, Marta asks how Enrica knows this, while Enrica realizes internally that Marta had already known they were not real sisters, and that their father had told her the Duchess caused the accident that killed her mother. Marta then admits the truth, revealing that she's not a legitimate daughter, but an illegitimate child, leaving Enrica visibly shocked. Marta grabs Enrica's hand and pleads for secrecy, fearing the consequences if it gets out. But Enrica calmly pulls her hand away and states that she is not like her, reminding her that she is no longer a child and must learn to think independently rather than be controlled by their father's words. Moreover, she insists that while it may be easy to blame others, their mother's death was truly an accident. With that, Enrica ends the discussion, leaves the room, and despite Marta calling after her to wait, she does not turn back. As time passes, the masquerade ball finally draws near, and we see Enrica preparing with Sarah as she tries on her dress. Almost immediately, she questions whether she looks strange, even describing it as weird. But in response, Sarah quickly reassures her that she looks absolutely beautiful. So beautiful that it might even be too much to show others. As a result, Enrica simply accepts the reassurance and calmly moves forward, Furthermore, as she walks down the stairs, Kyle is seen waiting at the bottom, fully dressed, and he asks if she is ready. However, the moment he sees her, he is completely taken aback, and as if that was not enough, a sharp pain hits his chest. Because of that, he lets out a painful sound, which immediately alarms Enrica, who rushes to ask what is wrong. In response, Kyle, still shaken, admits that seeing her in that dress makes him feel as if he does not exist, adding that it also makes his non-existent heart flutter. Hearing this, Enrica lightly teases him, calling him a smooth talker as always. Moreover, Kyle continues, clearly conflicted, saying that seeing her like this makes him even more unwilling to let her go alone, and he questions whether she still intends to attend without a partner. In reply, Enrica explains that there is something she absolutely must do alone, even though she is sorry. Consequently, Kyle accepts her decision but adds that if she insists so strongly, he has no choice. Yet he still requests to escort her when the gathering ends, asking her not to refuse him that much. Eventually, she agrees and promises to wait for him, after which she enters the chariot and leaves. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Duke Dyke's mansion, where Enrica arrives at the masquerade, dressed elegantly and wearing a mask, immediately drawing attention. The purpose of the gathering is revealed to be the display of royal gifts given to honor the Duke's services. However, everything quickly turns chaotic when those very gifts are stolen by someone, and the male lead, who is seen enjoying a secret meeting with the female lead at the masquerade, suddenly removes his mask, sparking confusion. As the commotion grows, the entire atmosphere becomes tense and ruined, and just when the thought that things could not get worse arises, a flashback is shown. In that memory, the Duke is seen with the female lead, and suddenly a punishment is announced for mishandling royal gifts, stating that he must pay with his life. The lady trembles and claims it is not her fault, insisting that the mistress of the house is responsible for managing the gift, which causes panic. Immediately after, she pleads for mercy for the Duchess, asking that she be forgiven at least on her behalf, and after hesitation, the Duke questions whether he should. As a result, the Duchess pledges strong loyalty to the female lead who speaks in her defense. Looking back on it, Enrica internally reflects that the story feels absurd, even thinking that no wonder villains seem more popular than such protagonists. And furthermore, she considers that she could use the Duchess's blind loyalty for her own advantage. However, before that thought is completed, she notices the Duchess in front of her, who comments that she looks troubled and suggests she might need help. In response, Enrica calmly observes the situation, already aware that she knows who stole the royal gifts, as the tension quietly builds. On hearing Enrica, the Duchess reacts with clear doubt, questioning why Enrica suddenly appears and why she would speak of helping her at all. In response, Enrica calmly raises the issue, noting that the tributes prepared for the banquet have disappeared. Immediately, this shocks the Duchess, who demands to know how she knows about it. Furthermore, she presses harder, asking who she is and whether she has any link to the disappearance. However, Enrica stays composed and explains that she will not be believed unless she reveals her identity first. As a result, she removes her mask and introduces herself as Enrica Wintersore, the eldest daughter of the Wintersore Duke, and adds that she believes she can find the lost tribute. Even so, the Duchess questions how the Duke's daughter could possibly do that, and even suggests doubt about trusting her. In response, Enrica firmly states that if she were the culprit, she would not have removed her mask, and she emphasizes that she is standing there under the name of the ducal house. Consequently, the Duchess decides to trust the ducal house for now, but sets a condition that if the tribute is retrieved, she will also make a promise in return in the name of the House of Dyke. Finally, Enrica agrees and instructs her to wait for 1 hour, addressing her as Marchioness. Meanwhile, the scene shifts as a woman walks through a corridor, visibly tired and frustrated, thinking to herself that she should never have attended such a ball because she feels like she is once again fading under the pressure of nobles. Furthermore, she recalls how people kept whispering that she looked familiar even though she wears a mask, showing that she is still recognized. At that point, she identifies herself as Sophia Faygreen, and it is revealed that she was once an ordinary and insignificant baron's daughter until everything changed after she began a fake relationship with the second prince. As she reflects, she remembers the day he approached her and asked her to become his lover, which already confused her deeply. However, it is further revealed that this arrangement is not a real romance, but a fake relationship meant to protect him from the suspicion of his brothers, the first and third princes. In a flashback, the second prince explains that she is the most suitable candidate, while she questions why she should take part in something so dangerous and asks what benefit she would gain from becoming his fake lover. In response, he offers a cooperation fee of 9 billion gold per month, leading to the agreement being formed in a surprisingly smooth way. As a result, rumors spread among the public, questioning why the prince is involved with someone of such low status, assuming he does not care as long as she has a decent face. Moreover, the situation continues as the second prince criticizes Sophia's performance, calling her acting poor and reminding her that she was supposed to act like a foolish airhead, yet her expression appears too intelligent. In response, Sophia becomes angry and defends herself, insisting she followed his instructions by loosening her gaze and keeping her mouth slightly open. However, he further complains that her mouth was not open enough and urges her to put more effort into her acting. As a result, Sophia becomes even more frustrated, thinking to herself that he is pushing her too far, and that this entire arrangement feels less like a fake relationship and more like workplace abuse. We are suddenly taken back to the present, where Sophia is walking through the hallway and reflecting deeply on her past. Furthermore, she regrets not speaking up earlier, believing she should have said something then. As she continues walking, she questions why she is so timid, and wishes, even if just once, that she could say everything without holding back, and also form friendships freely. However, before she can dwell on this further, she suddenly notices voices coming from inside a nearby room, and because of that, she quietly moves closer and stands to eavesdrop. Inside the room, Lady Brown is speaking with Enrica, who appears angry and firmly states that she already knows everything. Meanwhile, Sophia listens carefully from behind the door as the tension rises. As the situation escalates, Enrica warns Lady Brown that if she does not want things to get ugly, she should reveal where the tribute is, even threatening to summon a dark magician or allow torture until she wishes she were dead. As a result, Sophia becomes shocked while secretly watching, and she even thinks to herself that she once wanted to get close to the prince, yet this woman in front of her feels exactly like her type in some strange way. Meanwhile, Lady Brown reacts with irritation, denying everything and questioning why she is being suspected at all. However, Enrica calmly turns the situation around and identifies her as the true culprit behind the stolen tribute, explaining that she is known as a greedy woman who steals. Furthermore, Enrica reasons that Marcellus has a valid suspicion, pointing out her connection as the mistress of Lord Brown, while also mentioning her secret actions involving valuables taken from the Duke's stronghold. Although Lady Brown tries to defend herself, Enrica continues pressing her, asking if she is ready to return what she stole. Eventually, under pressure, Lady Brown gives up and returns everything she took, while Sophia silently observes the entire outcome from behind the door. Afterward, Enrica returns quietly to the Duchess's side, where Duchess Dyke is seen expressing deep gratitude and saying she does not know how to repay her. In response, Enrica calmly explains that she only did what needed to be done. Moreover, the Duchess admits her shame for doubting her earlier and expresses shock upon discovering that the Duke's mistress is connected to the Brown faction. Meanwhile, Enrica reflects internally that discovering the truth must have been a heavy burden and a huge shock for her. As the conversation continues, Enrica asks what she plans to do next, and the Duchess firmly decides to proceed with the divorce, with Enrica fully supporting her decision. Furthermore, the Duchess begins to reassess Enrica, noting that the rumors of her timidity and weakness are clearly false, especially since she identified the theft before anyone else intervened. Consequently, she praises her intelligence and even states that she has qualities suited for a future Archduchess. However, this statement immediately surprises Enrica, who recalls rumors of her broken engagement with the Grand Duke and questions what is meant by Archduchess. In addition, she learns that His Highness is present at the event, which shocks her deeply. As a result, Enrica suddenly runs off, thinking to herself that she must not meet that man and worrying that he might already be in the banquet hall. Therefore, she decides to wait on the terrace and leave later when the crowd begins to disperse. Meanwhile, she remains alone on the terrace, feeling bored and regretting not bringing something to drink. Just then, she notices an itching sensation on her hand and wonders if she was bitten by a bug. As if that was not enough, a masked figure appears at the window behind her and knocks, calling out to her. At first, she believes it might be Kale, but quickly notices a difference in the tone, which feels deeper and rougher. Consequently, realization hits her, and she is shocked as she wonders whether the person standing there is actually Raphael Kroinhardt, the Archduke. We see Enrica looking toward the other side of the window, her voice shaking as she asks if the person there is Archduke Kroinhardt. For a brief moment, there is silence, and then a calm answer comes, confirming it is him. Immediately, fear grips her, and she begins to tremble as the sound of his voice brings back the same emotions she felt at her final moments. A sharp pain fills her chest, as if her heart is pierced, and along with it comes a strong will to live mixed with deep regret. She quickly realizes the danger of the situation, knowing he would never forgive her for rejecting his proposal and running away. As a result, she tries to beg for forgiveness, but her words come out broken, and she stops midway, thinking it makes her sound like she is crying. However, she knows he would never tolerate such a sound, especially from something as small as a hiccup. Meanwhile, Raphael Kroinhardt stands still, watching her closely, as if trying to understand her reaction while preparing to speak. Yet, before he can say anything, panic takes over, and she decides she cannot stay there any longer. She rushes out, thinking she must kneel and beg for her life, but just as she reaches the other side, he is nowhere to be found, and he has already disappeared. Afterward, as Enrica enters the banquet hall, she continues searching for him. And although she feels a small sense of relief for not running into him again, she cannot help but wonder why he left so suddenly. Then she notices the nobles gathered and begins to wonder whether someone important has arrived. Just then, she spots Archduke Raphael Kroinhardt once more, but this time he is not with the maids, which surprises her. Without hesitation, she calls him Kyle and runs toward him, asking why he is there. In response, he reminds her that he had already said he would come to pick her up. Meanwhile, she becomes aware of the whispers around them and starts to question why everyone is reacting like that. Because of this, a sense of urgency rises within her, and she quickly suggests that they should leave at once. As the chariot moves forward, we watch Enrica turn to Kyle with concern, wondering how he could boldly enter through the main gate and questioning what would happen if he ran into the Archduke. However, he gives no reply, as usual, and only turns his face away without a smile. The silence makes her realize how serious the moment is, and she quickly thinks of a way to lift his mood. Just then, an idea comes to her, and she calls out to him while waving her hand until he looks at her. With a small sense of relief, she prepares herself and recalls the feeling from the day she regained her magic. Immediately, she opens her palm and a glowing light appears, forming a soft, bright butterfly. He looks surprised, and she reacts with joy, feeling proud that it worked. She then explains that she can use magic again after losing her mana for a while, and he responds with quiet amazement as he reaches out to touch the glowing form. At that moment, she stops the magic and adds that she hopes it might help lift his curse, showing that she has truly tried her best. Hearing this, he admits he never expected her to go this far for him, yet she calmly answers that it is only natural, since even if their bond is temporary, he is still her fiancé, and just as he is trying for her, she will also do everything she can for him. This deeply moves Kale, who is also the Archduke, and he expresses that meeting her is the greatest fortune of his life. Soon after, they arrive at the Count's estate, and she notices something unusual when he does not respond. She then realizes he has fallen asleep, and while watching him, she hears him murmur softly, asking not to be too harsh. This makes her pause as she notices his damp eyes and begins to wonder about him. Slowly, she moves closer and sits beside him, thinking about how strange it feels to see him like this, so different from his usual calm self. Furthermore, she reflects on how little she truly knows about him, including his family and his home, and decides she should ask him one day. She then gently calls him, saying it is time to wake up since the servants are waiting, but he does not respond. As a result, she reaches out to wake him, yet suddenly everything changes. In an instant, he grabs her hand, opens his eyes sharply, and throws her to the ground, pressing her hand down with force. This shocking turn leaves Enrica confused and startled as she calls out to him, unable to understand what just happened. In the next moment, Enrica calls out to Kyle, and he slowly looks at her, reaching out to touch her hair as if unsure of what he is seeing, asking if this is a dream. Without hesitation, she quickly reaches for his face and firmly denies it, bringing him back to reality. Meanwhile, we are drawn into her thoughts as she stands with Vermont, carefully considering her next move. She reflects on Marchioness Dyke, recalling that she came from a respected family of knights, endured strict training in her youth, and even after retiring, rose to power in high society. As a result, she realizes that gaining favor from such a person could become a strong support for her, especially since she has now received an invitation from the Duchess Dyke. Vermont watches her closely during this moment of deep thought and points out the timing of the invitation, coming right after the ball, while also noting how calm she seems, as if she has already given up on her fiancé. However, Enrica quickly dismisses that idea and makes it clear, in her own way, that everything she is doing is part of a larger plan to save Kyle. Even so, Vermont questions her resolve, wondering if she truly believes she can break the curse without help. And she admits that right now, her power is still very weak, barely enough to use magic properly. Furthermore, she recalls how she was lucky before, when she did not need magic, yet now she strongly desires to regain her full power. Because of this, she turns to him and expresses her belief that with his help, she can recover her true strength. However, instead of agreeing, he reacts with sudden anger. He narrows his eyes, grabs the bead hanging from the ribbon around his neck, and throws it at her while shouting in frustration. He expresses his hatred, not only for her weakness, but also for the way she still tries to help her fiancé despite it. And even more, for the fact that he, a powerful demon who has lived for 400 years, was summoned by someone who has no desire for power or control. As a result, he refuses to be dragged into her struggle and storms away. Enrica calls after Vermont in alarm, yet no matter how much she tries, he does not return. At the Dyke estate, we see Enrica walking inside while quietly observing her surroundings, noting that she did not see this place during the ball. She reflects that although it is not as grand as Kale's mansion, it carries a calm and charming elegance. However, just as she moves forward, she suddenly sprains her ankle and begins to fall. Before she hits the ground, someone quickly supports her, asking if she is hurt, and she answers that she is fine thanks to him. Even so, a sharp pain rises from her ankle, and she realizes she must have twisted it when she tripped. Without hesitation, the man lifts her up and she is startled, asking what he is doing. He calmly explains that helping the injured is a knight's duty and asks her to remain at ease. At that moment, she thinks about how she has never experienced something like this with Kale, and as he asks where she is headed so he can escort her, a voice suddenly calls out from the front. The Marchioness appears and calls him Tristan Dyke, and it becomes clear that he is her brother. Immediately, he lowers her and greets the Marchioness, and Enrica is surprised to hear him call her sister. Soon after, we see Enrica inside with her leg treated and wrapped in a bandage, as the Marchioness apologizes and suggests she should return home to rest, even though she had many questions to ask. At the same time, she turns her anger toward Tristan, questioning what he did to cause such trouble, while he calmly insists he only helped an injured guest. This makes Enrica wonder about their relationship, as the tension between them feels strong. She then gathers herself and asks what the Marchioness wanted to discuss, and the Marchioness explains that after the banquet, someone approached her and asked to meet Enrica, requesting her help in arranging it. Hearing this, Enrica grows uneasy and asks who it is, briefly thinking of the Archduke Kronhart, but the answer turns out to be Lady Sophia Faygreen. This immediately troubles her, as she begins to sense more problems ahead. The Marchioness explains that the lady claimed to be drawn to her strong spirit, yet found it strange since they barely knew each other. Enrica then silently holds her head, thinking about how difficult it already is to avoid the Archduke, and how she does not want to get involved with someone connected to chaos. Just then, Tristan steps forward again, kneels before her, and offers to escort her home, praising her ability to draw attention. However, the Marchioness reacts sharply, ordering him to step away and accusing him of having hidden intentions, which makes Enrica question what that could mean. Despite his claim of innocence, the Marchioness quickly pulls her away and insists she will be taken home in her carriage. As they walk, Enrica gently questions if such anger is necessary, since he only helped, but the Marchioness firmly warns her to stay away from him, explaining that, despite being her brother, he has been involved with many women and cannot be trusted. Chapter 16. The coachman announces to Enrica that she has arrived, opens the carriage door, and helps her down. As she walks, she reflects on Tristan, first thinking he seemed kind, yet now seeing him as a playboy, although she also considers that the Marchioness might be misunderstanding him, since family judgments can be harsh. Just then, a messenger calls out and hands her a flower, passing along Tristan's message, and as she reads the note inside, she realizes he wants to be remembered by flowers and not just her injured ankle, which only confirms her suspicion that he truly is a playboy, giving the Marchioness a reason to worry. Suddenly, someone touches her hair, and she turns to see Kale, who notices the flower and the note. As he takes them, suspicion rises in him, leading him to question whether she has started seeing someone else. In response, she quickly explains about visiting the Marquis estate and getting slightly hurt, and this shifts his focus at once, causing concern as he bends to check her ankle before lifting her into his arms. Although she protests, he remains firm, even stating that refusal would force him to hold the Marquis estate responsible, and as a result, she gives in, while thinking to herself how strange it is that everyone keeps carrying her today. Meanwhile, as Kale carries Enrica into the mansion, she questions the situation, pointing out how the Marchioness still believes she will become Empress, which feels odd since she is now with him. Yet he calmly replies that the Marchioness does not care about rumors, even though she insists it still does not make sense given her influence in high society. At the same time, she grows shy as the maids watch them, feeling embarrassed and trying to cover her face, but he reassures her, explaining that such a sight is rare. Not just him carrying her, but him laughing and speaking warmly with someone. After placing her on the sofa, he asks her to rest and suggests calling a doctor, which leads her to reflect, realizing the servants have never seen him like this, which makes her question his past. Consequently, she asks about his family, wondering if he had always been alone in the Count's palace, and after a brief silence, he responds honestly, holding her hand and revealing that most of his family are dead, leaving a heavy feeling in the air. Understanding the life of Raphael Kronhart. The late Archduke Kronhart had many wives, and his mother was only one of them. While the other women fought to make their children heirs, she was given tea by the second wife during her pregnancy, and soon after, her body grew weak. She barely managed to give birth, yet she closed her eyes before she could even hold her child. At that moment, one of the maids noticed that something was wrong. The baby was not crying and had no clear pulse. Another questioned if the child was already dead. However, the maid insisted he was still breathing, though very faint. While confusion filled the room, a dark wizard suddenly appeared and claimed the child was cursed, warning that he would soon die if nothing was done. He offered to save him, and since the late Duke showed no concern and there was no other choice, the maids handed the baby over. From then on, Raphael Kronhart was raised as a test subject, forced to endure endless magical experiments. Pain became his normal, as nosebleeds and fainting from severe headaches happened often. Even when he wished for death, the wizard kept reviving him with magic again and again. Yet, like pouring water into a cracked jar, his body slowly reached its limit, and it was said he would not live past 20, or only a few years more if lucky. As time passed, the suffering only grew worse, and by the age of 10, Raphael finally spoke out, asking the wizard to end his life instead of forcing him to live in pain. For the first time, he stood up to him, and in response, the wizard decided it was time to send him back, revealing that his interest had only been to watch how his cursed life would end, expecting something far more brutal than anything seen before. With that, he gave him freedom, urging him to struggle and survive until the end. After this, the Kronhart family took him in, and for the first time, he experienced warmth, comfort, and the idea of family. However, before he could accept it, attempts on his life began. Poison and assassins came from his own siblings, yet he remained calm, thinking he was already used to such pain. Even on the streets, he paid wizards to use magic to keep his failing body moving. Quietly, he endured everything and built his strength within the ducal house. When the time came, he struck back. The eldest brother died from poison, the second sister died in a carriage accident, and the third was dealt with as a warning. As rumors of a curse spread and the remaining siblings fled, he ended his father's life with his own hands. Even then, the Dark Wizard's words lingered, making him believe he could never escape such a cruel fate, until Enrica appeared, becoming the one who made his once empty heart begin to ache. Enrica reacts with regret after hearing Kale speak about his family, and she quickly apologizes, feeling she should not have asked. However, instead of easing the moment, he grows distant and decides it is better for her to have dinner alone, mentioning that something urgent has come up. He leaves right after, and although she calls out for him to wait, he does not stop, which makes her realize something is wrong. Later that evening, she sits alone at the dining table, and as we watch her reflect, she notes how he always made time to eat with her before, yet now she is left by herself, which fills her with guilt. She comes to the conclusion that she must have made a mistake, and as a result, she decides not to ignore it but to go and apologize properly. She heads to his room, yet just as she is about to knock, voices from inside stop her. She hears a question about whether this is the best choice, followed by his calm reply, and then Milua speaks about a lady who was very sick 2 months ago, suggesting they check if she remembers it while he gathers information about people connected to her. This shocks her deeply, as she realizes they are talking about her. At that moment, he senses someone outside and quietly warns the other person, which makes her panic and run. When the door opens, no one is seen, and although the other person asks who was there, he dismisses it and continues the discussion. Unknown to them, she remains hidden behind the door, using her magic to avoid being caught, and once he leaves, she runs back to the dining room. As she thinks it over, she notices how strange everything feels, from his cold expression when speaking about his family to the tone he used while discussing her. And for the first time, she begins to believe that Kyle might not be the person she thought he was, but someone with a hidden side. Meanwhile, the next morning, we see Enrica sitting as Sarah arranges her hair, and the maid quickly notices her troubled mood. She tries to hide it, yet admits inwardly that she did not sleep at all because of worry. As Sarah suggests she at least comb her hair, she agrees, and then suddenly recalls something, leading her to ask about Tristan Dyke. In response, Sarah explains that almost every woman in the kingdom knows him, describing how he joined the Night Order at 18 but was later removed after a scandal involving a nun, and how he is known for charming every kind of woman, from maids to noble ladies. She then reassures her that she will protect her if such a man approaches, which earns her thanks. Later, as we follow Enrica stretching and reflecting, she admits she did not expect this, realizing that appearances can be misleading, and she resolves to stay away from him. However, just when it seems she has made up her mind, she looks outside and sees Tristan Dyke sitting on a tree, casually waving at her. Before anyone can react, she rushes out of the room, telling Sarah she will be right back, unable to ignore what she has just seen. Enrica rushes outside to meet Tristan Dyke, breathing heavily, and while she is still trying to catch her breath, he warmly expresses how glad he is to see her again. However, she does not relax at all, and instead, she quickly questions how he found the place and even managed to enter the mansion. In response, he calmly explains that he got the address from the coachman and slipped in through a small hole in the wall, even pointing it out, which leaves her confused as she wonders if such a gap really exists. Although he admits it is rude, he adds that he could not stay away because he was worried about her, yet she does not accept it easily, urging him to leave at once before someone sees him while pushing him away. At the same time, we understand her inner stress, as she is already troubled about Kyle, and now this situation only adds more pressure. Nevertheless, he notices her unease and gently points out that something seems to be bothering her, claiming he is good at reading women's expressions. This catches her off guard and even annoys her a little, yet he continues, suggesting that speaking to someone who knows nothing might help her feel better, and that he might even be able to help. As a result, she finally admits that someone close to her is hiding something, and this makes her feel uneasy. They then sit together under the tree, and after listening carefully, he understands her concern and offers to help, urging her to follow him. Soon after, Enrica and Tristan Dyke walk together into an unfamiliar place, and eventually they arrive at an old building. He reveals that it is the largest information guild in the kingdom, a place where any information can be found, which leaves her in shock as she realizes such a place exists. As they step inside, we see people gathered, talking and moving about, and she senses a tense atmosphere around her. Just then, before she can fully take it in, she notices a man named Carl with an eye patch, who approaches and places a hand on his shoulder, clearly recognizing him. This moment surprises her even more, as the man greets him with familiarity and excitement, calling him Guildmaster Tristan, which completely changes how we see him in that instant. Enrica is taken aback as Carl calls Tristan the Guildmaster, and although he claims it may not matter, he still questions why everything is being left to him while the other simply walks away. In response, Tristan makes it clear that it is because of trust, even calling him his vice guildmaster, and furthermore brings up a past moment when they last met, which had been the day Carl nearly faced execution for trying to run away with a princess from a nearby kingdom. That memory still feels fresh, as if it only happened yesterday, when there had been a desperate rush to save him. However, Carl quickly brushes it off and shifts his focus, asking about the lady nearby, wondering if she is his new girl. Enrica immediately rejects that idea, yet before the moment can settle, her attention shifts across the room, where she notices a man walking beside a woman with a scarf covering her face as if hiding who she is. As she looks closer, a thought forms, questioning if it is Marta, and this sparks confusion about why she would be in such a place. Meanwhile, Carl brings the moment back, wishing for a safe trip, and Tristan directs them upstairs to the Info Guild's office. Because of that, she moves slightly behind him, trying not to be seen. Once upstairs, they sit while another man stands nearby, watching closely. The guildmaster greets her and asks about the person she wants to investigate, and in a sudden turn, Tristan points out that it is someone hiding something from her. At that moment, she reflects, knowing she first wanted answers about Kale, yet finds it hard to say it since he is also a noble. As a result, she shifts her focus and speaks about her sister, Marta Wintersore, recalling how she ignored the pain caused by their father, and allowed it to continue, and also mentions seeing her leave the place earlier, which raises new questions about her actions. Meanwhile, the man listening realizes he had worked with the same person earlier, and although he hesitates due to the private nature of the request, a look from Tristan pushes him to speak. Consequently, he explains that it was not anything serious, only a request to confirm if Duke Kronhart and Lady Wintersore will attend an upcoming hunting banquet. As if that is not enough, he adds that they also asked for the seating plan, but he told them to return in 2 days. This causes Enrica to think deeply, realizing that both she and the Duke are involved, which makes the situation even more troubling. Later on, outside the building, she stands with Tristan, who reassures her that no information will be given and that her sister will be sent away. In addition, he mentions the young lady's little sister again, which adds to her thoughts, yet she expresses her thanks and promises to repay the fair price later. However, he refuses payment and instead asks for friendship, which surprises her. Although she feels unsure and even a bit suspicious, she accepts because of his help. As a result, he grows happy and suggests they go somewhere together, and even though she is confused about the place, she follows. Soon, they arrive at a night market, and she is amazed by what she sees, realizing she never knew such a place existed in the city. He then asks if she likes it, and although she does not answer directly, she notices how casually he speaks. He explains that speaking formally there would make them stand out, and since they are now friends, it should be fine. She agrees, yet in her mind, she feels as though she keeps getting pulled into all of this, unable to stop the flow of events. Later, Enrica and Tristan sit with a fortune teller, and at once the woman studies her and speaks in a strange way, sensing that she feels out of place in this world. This causes surprise, yet before she can react, a card is slid toward her, followed by words about guilt over taking something that was never truly Tujé, but had always belonged to her from the start. As a result, she begins to think deeply about what that could mean. Furthermore, the woman shifts the focus and urges her to treat the person beside her well, describing him as someone who would give up his life for her without a second thought. Hearing this, she assumes it is about Tristan and quickly rejects the idea. However, he only laughs and agrees with the reading, claiming it is accurate. Just then, the fortune teller turns her sharp gaze toward him and asks to see his hand, questioning how many women are tied to his life. Without hesitation, he stretches out his palm and admits there have been many, yet none brought real love. Consequently, the woman warns him that if he continues in such a careless way, marriage will never come, and a lonely life will follow unless he becomes more honest. This brings a shift in his mood, as he quietly reflects on the bad meaning behind it, yet Enrica notices and quickly laughs it off, pushing him away slightly while deciding it is best to leave before things grow worse. Outside, the two walk together under a tree, and although things seem calm, she is lost in thought, which draws his attention as he asks what is wrong and reminds her of the fortune teller she seemed interested in. In response, she admits that speaking about such personal matters in front of others feels strange, especially topics like marriage. However, he accepts the idea without denial and begins to speak about his own life, explaining that he was born into a strict knight family and had spent his life acting as a proper knight, even though it felt forced. At some point, he had wanted to break free, and therefore, if such a fortune is the cost of living freely, he is willing to accept it. Hearing this, she reflects inwardly, realizing how similar it is to her own past life before reincarnation, when she also lived for others. Because of that, she praises him lightly, suggesting it may be better to enjoy life as a rogue than live as a holy knight serving a god he does not believe in. However, the moment shifts as he steps closer and touches her face, speaking about winning a woman's heart in a way that values not being real. This causes her to pull back at once, rejecting the idea and calling it trashy, then deciding to end the moment and head home. As she walks away, she feels foolish for taking things seriously, even for a short time. Meanwhile, Tristan remains behind and calls out, wondering if that means winning her heart is now impossible. Later that day, Enrica sits in a boat with Kale, and as they face each other across the table, he calmly asks if she enjoyed her early morning outing. At once, she coughs, caught off guard, and he quickly asks if she is all right. However, her mind begins to race, wondering how much he knows, since she is sure she returned from the night market without drawing any attention. Because of that, she denies everything, claiming she never stepped outside her room the day before. In response, he plays along in a teasing way, agreeing, yet adding that she must have been too busy wandering around all night, even asking if she visited his dreams at dawn. This causes her to pause, confused, as she asks if she really appeared in his dream and what she did there. Instead of giving a clear answer, he avoids it, saying the moment feels too bright for such talk. As a result, she raises her voice in disbelief, unable to accept what she is hearing, yet he simply laughs and brushes it off as a joke. She then studies him closely, unsure if she is dealing with a person or something more cunning. And as she watches him feed a bird, she slowly calms, thinking that this is the Kale she knows, while that strange side from before feels distant, almost unreal. Meanwhile, he notices her expression and gently asks if something is troubling her, and after a brief pause, she shifts the topic and asks if he knows how to hunt. This sudden question draws his attention, leading him to wonder why she asked such a thing. In response, she explains that the royal family holds a hunting event around this time every year, and she has always wanted to attend, even wishing to take part herself, asking if it would be all right. He remains silent for a moment, thinking carefully, and then answers that if it is what she wants, there is no need to seek his permission. However, he adds an important detail, revealing that Archduke Raphael Kronhart will also attend the event. This shocks her deeply, and before she can settle her thoughts, he continues, explaining that due to certain reasons, there is a high chance he will not be able to join, which means he may not be there to protect her if anything happens. Because of this, her thoughts grow heavy, as she connects the Archduke's presence, his absence, and Marta's plans, realizing how complicated everything is becoming. She then asks if there is any way around it, hoping for another option, yet he admits his concerns remain, and if she is truly set on going, the best choice is to find someone who can act as her guard. Enrica arrives with Kale at a place, and at once she realizes it is the Knight's training ground within the Count's estate, something she had never fully noticed before, even though she had seen knights around the mansion. However, just as she takes this in, someone suddenly rushes out and shouts, which startles her badly. The man is Bacchus. In response, he turns to her with concern, asking if she is all right, and she admits she was only surprised. He then faces Bacchus and points out how silently he moves, adding that he scared his fiancée. Because of that, the man quickly explains that he had only been following an earlier order to train in hiding his presence, and he apologizes at once, introducing himself as the vice captain of the Dawnlight Knights. In response, she greets him politely, while he expresses how honored he feels to meet the commander's fiancée. This causes her to lean closer and quietly confirm if Kyle is truly the commander, and he calmly admits it, saying he still uses his sword from time to time. Meanwhile, Bacchus announces that the knights have gathered, and soon they all move to the hall where the knights stand in uniform. As a result, Kale steps forward and formally introduces Lady Enrica Wintersoar as his fiancée. At once, whispers spread among them as they react to the news, surprised that their cold commander is truly getting married. She senses the strange mood and reflects that she was once meant to be the Archduke's fiancée, so now it may look as if he stole her away. However, he quickly moves on and asks who among them will volunteer to serve as her guard. As she adjusts her hat and assumes no one will step forward, yet to her shock, every single knight raises a hand. Even then, he allows them to answer freely without fear, and one speaks out with strong desire to serve under a kind person. This leads her to think it must be far better than enduring the harsh training under such a strict commander. He then turns to her and leaves the choice in her hands, but she removes her hat and admits she cannot decide since it is too sudden. He warns her that even liking someone may cause problems, and when she asks why, he admits his jealousy and takes her hand, placing a kiss on it. At once, the knights freeze in shock. She becomes aware of their gaze and realizes his action feels like a warning to them. Just then, Melua rushes in with urgent news from the royal palace. As a result, Kyle apologizes and asks her to wait, and she agrees without hesitation. However, before leaving, he pauses and decides not to leave her alone, appointing Hayden as her escort. The young knight accepts the duty with confidence. Later, Enrica walks with Hayden through the hallway, and he speaks with pride, saying it is an honor to serve her, even though he only became a full knight a month ago. She accepts his help and quietly notes his stiff manner, understanding he is still new. As they continue, he shows her the main training ground where most drills take place, and she realizes how large it is. Furthermore, he explains that duels are also held there, and that sometimes the commander even joins them. This leads her to ask if he is truly that skilled, and in response, Hayden speaks with certainty, calling him one of the strongest swordsmen on the continent, someone he has never seen lose. As she watches the knights train with swords against dummies, she begins to feel something is strange, since such skill should have been known in the story she remembers. However, before she can think further, a sudden accident occurs as a knight strikes a dummy and his practiced sword breaks. In an instant, a piece of the broken wood flies toward her. Hayden reacts quickly and steps in front of her, but the wood hits his shoulder. He cries out in pain, and without delay, she rushes to help him. Enrica stands nearby as Hayden receives treatment, and once it is done, she expresses deep regret over what happened. However, he quickly reassures her, explaining that it is only a minor fracture and nothing serious. Even so, she cannot ignore the weight of it, pointing out that for a knight, an arm means everything. Because of that, her thoughts drift inward as she recalls trying to block the attack with magic. Yet her power was too weak to make any real difference. This realization troubles her, as she feels that if her magic had been stronger, she could have protected him. Meanwhile, he notices the change in her face and gently calls out, making it clear that she should not feel guilty at all. Furthermore, he explains that as the commander's fiancée, she holds a place above them, and for a knight, protecting their master is only natural. Hearing this, Enrica suddenly makes a decision and asks if he will become her personal knight. This takes him by surprise, as he questions if she truly means it, yet she stands firm and refuses to take back her words. As a result, instead of hesitating, Hayden quickly moves to retrieve his sword and returns, placing it in her hands. He explains the proper way to complete the appointment, guiding her to tap his shoulder lightly with the blade. She pauses for a brief moment, wondering if it is truly right, yet she follows through and does it. At once, he accepts the role with a smile, pledging his life to her, and she acknowledges that from this moment on, he will serve by her side. However, before the moment can settle, another knight enters and calls out to Hayden, asking about his injury. The man quickly notices what has just happened and reacts with shock, raising his voice in disbelief that such an appointment was made without the commander present. In response, Hayden brushes it off lightly, calling it simple. Yet the other knight strongly disagrees, stressing that knighthood should not be treated so casually. As their voices rise, Enrica steps in and asks about the newcomer, and he respectfully introduces himself as Sasha of the Dawnlight Knights. He then admits that the broken practice sword from earlier was his fault, and that it almost caused harm, taking full responsibility for the incident. At that moment, she realizes he is the one involved, yet instead of blaming him, she speaks calmly, questioning if punishment is truly needed. She reasons that for a strong training sword to break, it must reflect great effort and skill, which she finds impressive. Because of that, she advises him to focus on training even harder rather than worrying about punishment, and she suggests keeping the matter between them. This response leaves both Hayden and Sasha in awe, as the first expresses admiration, calling his lord like an angel, while the second silently agrees, deeply moved by her kindness. Later, Enrica reports everything that happened to Cal, and as he listens carefully, he immediately asks if she has truly appointed Hayden as her personal knight. In response, she confirms it, explaining that it simply turned out that way. For a brief moment, he falls silent, and she watches him closely, wondering if he is upset because she made such a decision alone. However, he quickly reassures her, explaining that although Hayden is still young, he is both skilled and loyal, and in fact, he was already among the top candidates he had considered for her guard. Even so, he admits that it is a little strange how quickly the decision was made, almost as if Hayden must have impressed her deeply. Because of that, she notices his slightly downcast expression and calls out to him, then shifts the topic and asks to make a request of her own. She explains that she wants to learn swordsmanship, and at once he is shocked, repeating the idea in disbelief and asking if she is serious. Nevertheless, she remains firm, dressed and ready, explaining that she cannot keep relying on him and Hayden until her magic fully returns, and therefore learning basic self-defense is necessary. In response, he accepts her decision and suggests they begin with simple practice, starting with light swings. Immediately, she agrees with enthusiasm, saluting him and calling him teacher, then attempts to swing the sword. However, she quickly realizes how heavy it is and asks how she performed. At that moment, he moves closer and stands behind her, guiding her hands to show the correct position, explaining that the proper grip will make it easier and more comfortable. Because of their close distance, she becomes tense and he notices it, lightly questioning if he is hearing her heartbeat, wondering if it is just his imagination. This causes her irritation and she steps away, declaring that if he continues teasing her, she will quit. However, before she can leave, he pulls her back, reminding her that she is the one who started this training. Meanwhile, Sasha and Hayden pass by and notice the scene between them, and Hayden reacts with interest, while Sasha stands in shock, unable to believe what he is seeing, even noting that it is the first time he has seen the commander smile so naturally. Later in the evening, Enrica returns to the mansion completely exhausted, thinking she might collapse after training until the end. She reflects in frustration on her pain and suffering, blaming herself for not forming a contract with Vermont earlier to fully restore her magic, believing she would have avoided all of this. As a result, she decides firmly that she will make that contract no matter what today. She then heads toward the room she believes Vermont is in, forcefully opens the door, and calls out, only to find it empty. The silence confuses her, and she lights a candle while calling his name again. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her from upstairs, saying her name, and she quickly goes up. As she reaches the room, she questions what is going on and why he is sitting in the dark. At that moment, she is struck with shock as she sees a human figure with cat ears, completely different from what she expected. Enrica, upon seeing the figure in front of her, immediately notices his bare skin and, overwhelmed with shock, screams that he is a pervert. As a result, she runs away in panic, yet before she can get far, he quickly grabs her and pulls her back. She struggles and cries out for help, but in response, he pushes her down and firmly tells her to calm down, explaining that it is actually him, Vermont. Gradually, she settles, and both of them end up sitting across from each other. At this point, she looks closely at him and confirms that this is his real form, while he responds in frustration, saying she has already heard that many times. Then she asks why he has always stayed in the form of a cat, questioning if it was just to look cute. However, he immediately rejects that idea, explaining that it was more efficient for controlling his magic power, but now he no longer has enough mana to maintain even basic transformation magic, which forced him back into his original form. As he speaks, he groans in pain, and she quickly moves closer, tapping his shoulder and asking if he is all right, worried that he might be injured. Meanwhile, as she approaches, he senses the presence of pure magic power from her and realizes he has reached his limit. Because of that, he suddenly insists that they form a contract. She is shocked by this sudden change and questions it, remembering how he rejected the idea before. However, she quickly decides internally that before he changes his mind again, it is best to proceed, and so she asks what needs to be done. In response, he explains that she must allow him to absorb her magic power, describing it as having an unbelievably strong and pleasant energy. Immediately after, he pulls her closer and bites her neck, leaving her confused as she wonders if this is how magic absorption works. Shortly after, he brings up the hunting banquet and asks how he knows about it, and he explains that he overheard nights at the mansion. Furthermore, he expresses confusion about why she would go somewhere so dangerous, calling her fragile. She then replies that this is exactly why she formed a contract with him. However, he warns her that even with the contract, she will not be able to use magic properly right away, especially since she has strong power but little skill. While she drinks tea, he continues advising her not to act recklessly and to avoid getting lost in the forest. In addition, he promises to teach her a simple fire spell to help if her body temperature drops, and also a detection spell to tell edible plants from non-edible ones. Although she tells him to stop nagging, he continues, adding one final and important instruction. He explains that if she ever needs to summon him, she must make a small wound like the one on her neck and draw blood, and no matter the time or place, he will come. She immediately questions why blood is necessary, saying she hates pain. Yet he responds calmly that he also does not want her to be hurt, but reminds her that even a single drop of blood could save her life someday. The next day, Enrica stands outside, ready to enter the carriage, when Sarah walks up and gently holds her hand. In a worried tone, she apologizes for insisting on staying behind and says she might still be needed by her. However, in response, Enrica calmly assures her that it is fine. She recalls how, a few days earlier, upon hearing about the hunting banquet, Sarah had asked to remain at the Count's estate because she claimed there was something she absolutely had to do. Even though her reasons are unclear, Enrica had no choice but to allow it, believing she must have her own matters she cannot share. As a result, she reassures her once more, explaining that Kale's knights will protect her, so there is no need for worry. Sarah accepts this and pleads for her safety, saying it would break her heart if even a single scratch touched her face. She then turns to the guards, and Hayden confidently responds that she has nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Enrica sits across from Sasha, who notices her uneasy expression and asks if something is troubling her. She quickly says she is fine, yet her thoughts drift back to Kale's words about Archduke Kronhard attending the hunting banquet. Because of that, she feels a quiet tension building inside her, especially with Kale absent and the possibility of the Archduke appearing. However, she reminds herself that she needs answers about Marta's plans, and even if she meets the Archduke, nothing should happen at a gathering full of nobles. So she forces herself to stay calm. Later, when they arrive at the hunting banquet campsite, she is surprised by how lively the atmosphere is, finding it better than expected. She then tells Hayden she will look around, and he respectfully agrees, saying he will change into his armor and follow her soon after. As she walks deeper into the area alone, she suddenly notices a rabbit and a squirrel, which startle her and cause her to run, as the small animals move after her. Eventually, she stops to catch her breath and looks around, realizing she has gone too far and might have lost Hayden. Because of that, she decides she should head back. However, just as she is about to turn, she hears the sound of a horse approaching. At once, she looks toward the direction of the sound and sees a rider wearing full armor coming closer. This causes her to pause in confusion as she quietly wonders who the person could be. Kale reflects deeply, thinking that attending royal events has always been part of his duty as a Grand Duke, yet it is never something he enjoys. Moreover, the hidden political games among nobles at such gatherings always drain him, making them feel more like burden than honor. Because of that, Enrica's earlier words should normally have irritated him, but instead, he finds himself unwilling to disappoint her for reasons he cannot fully explain. Furthermore, it has been a long time since he last received reports about her movements from the person assigned to watch over her, and those reports mention that she has been moving around busily since dawn. As a result, he concludes she must have gathered information about the hunting event through those actions. Even though he knows she is hiding something from him, strangely, he does not feel the need to stop her risky behavior. In fact, the thought that she is trying to break his curse brings him a quiet sense of comfort, especially knowing she is thinking about him and acting for his sake, which leaves him lost in thought. Meanwhile, a flashback begins at the royal palace, where Raphael Kronhart sits calmly mixing his tea before tasting it. Just then, Meilua rushes into the room and informs him that His Majesty the King summons him to the audience chamber. In response, he finishes the tea, pours it out, and prepares to leave without hesitation. However, before Meilua can step away, he calls out and instructs her to prepare his armor and horse immediately after the audience ends, explaining that he has somewhere important to go. This shocks her, and she quickly asks what will happen if the king searches for him during the banquet. Because of that concern, she wonders about his sudden decision. Yet he remains calm and tells her to keep Bacchus by the king's side so that any questions can be handled smoothly, even suggesting they say he went deep into the forest for a hunt. Although she adjusts her glasses and warns that such actions might cause him to lose favor with the king, she still asks where he plans to go. At that moment, he clearly states that he is going to Enrica, and as a result, she becomes uneasy, confirming that she already has a bad feeling about his decision. Back in the present, Enrica stands frozen as she sees the armored figure, and she asks who it is. However, there is no answer at first, and instead the person calmly removes the helmet and smiles, revealing Kyle. At once, she is surprised and questions how he even got there, reminding him that he said he had other matters to attend to. In response, he explains that he finished everything earlier because he was worried about her. Then she asks about Hayden, and he replies that the knight was looking forward to the hunt but is likely resting now. Meanwhile, Hayden is far away, crying because he cannot see her. Because of that, she reacts in shock, realizing he came in Hayden's place, and she points out that fact. However, he notices she is focusing too much on Hayden and calmly questions when they became so close. As a result, he turns slightly distant and says that if she is happier to see Hayden, he will simply leave and bring him instead, then begins to walk away. However, before he can go far, Enrica quickly runs after him and asks him to stop, telling him not to leave. Furthermore, she admits she does not know all the details, but she is glad he came and asks him not to leave her. Hearing this, he sighs and questions if she is being honest, noting that he cannot easily win against her like this. Just as she tries to respond, she suddenly notices movement inside his clothes and points it out. At that moment, he calmly reveals that it is a rabbit he found in the forest, saying he thought she might like it. He then brings out a small pink rabbit, and she immediately reacts with delight, calling it cute. He adds that he thought she could use it for hunting practice, while she quietly thinks about releasing it safely instead. Smiling, he asks her to pretend she never heard what he just said. As a result, she gently takes the rabbit and lets it go on the ground. She then says it is time to part ways and wonders what else he might do next. Meanwhile, the rabbit walks a short distance, stops, and turns back to look at her. Suddenly, it speaks in a warning voice, telling her to be careful of what surrounds her, and only she seems to hear it. In shock, she quickly turns to Kyle and asks if he heard it, explaining that the rabbit just spoke. However, he looks confused and asks what she means. She repeats that it spoke in human words, but he calmly explains that the forest is known as the Forest of Spirits, part of the royal territory where many mystical beings still exist because it has remained mostly untouched for a long time. Furthermore, he adds that some wizards can understand their language, suggesting they may have encountered one of those beings. He then asks what the rabbit said, and she replies that it warned her to be careful of her surroundings. Just then, a scream is heard from a distance, and she asks what it is. He responds that he does not know, but they should go check. Although she suggests returning to camp, he insists she comes with him, and she worries it might be connected to Martha. As a result, they ride together on a horse toward the direction of the sound, guided by him. While moving, he confirms that the noise came from ahead, and another roar follows, causing confusion. He quickly tells everyone to stay calm and not waste time. Soon after, they reach the guards, where he informs them of the location, surprising them. He demands to know what is happening, and they respond with fear, saying that a monster has appeared. A monster? Kyle asks at once, then presses further, wanting to know if it is confirmed and if there are any casualties. In response, one of the guards explains that luckily it did not directly approach people, although several witnesses, including those who ran away, clearly saw it. Because of that, he concludes that the monster must have moved far away and immediately orders that all witnesses be brought in for questioning. Meanwhile, Enrica looks worried and asks if the royal family should be informed so the banquet can be stopped. However, he explains that although that would normally be correct, the current king is stubborn and will likely try to hide the incident from the nobles since the hunting banquet is a major royal event. As a result, she asks what they should do next, and he decides that he will quietly handle the monster himself for now, adding that he will first drop her off at the campsite. Just then, Kale suddenly senses movement and urgently tells her to get down as arrows fly toward them, revealing that spies are hiding nearby. At once, the attackers shout that it is confirmed and rush in with the intention to kill. In response, he quickly tells her to excuse him for a moment, and she stays on the horse, covering her eyes as she hears him fighting them off and forcing them to retreat. However, the spies continue shouting orders not to let them escape. While they move quickly, she asks who they are and why they are talking about killing. He then explains that they are likely assassins targeting him, most probably sent by the First Prince, although he cannot confirm everything yet. Because of that, she asks why the First Prince would go after him, and he explains that it is because he supports the Second Prince instead. At this, she thinks to herself that the Second Prince is the original male lead who is deeply connected to the heroine Sophia, and that Kyle is on his side. However, before they can fully escape, one assassin fires at the horse, causing both of them to fall and roll down a hill together. He holds her tightly as they tumble until they finally come to a stop. Soon after, she opens her eyes in confusion and realizes he is hanging off the edge of a cliff near a waterfall while still holding her. Immediately, she tells him to let go, saying there is no need for him to be in danger too. In response, he calmly asks, what if he does not want to? She insists it is not the time for jokes, and tells him he can climb up alone while she will find a way to survive. However, he remains silent for a moment and then releases his grip from the cliff. As a result, both of them begin to fall, and he tells her not to worry because he will protect her no matter what. She closes her eyes as they both fall into the water below. Enrica slowly wakes up and realizes she is inside a building, lying down. As she sits up, she immediately tries to understand her situation, thinking that just moments ago she was with Kale and they had fallen into the water. Because of that confusion, she looks around carefully and then hears voices coming from outside the door. In response, she quietly moves closer and peeps through, only to be shocked by what she sees. She notices herself sitting across from a manly figure, both of them deep in conversation. At once, she watches as the other person questions her about rumors, saying she might be completely different from what people say. She sees herself respond by asking what rumors he has heard, while holding something in her hand. Meanwhile, the conversation continues, and the manly figure mentions that people say he killed all his siblings in the fight for the throne and took power. In response, he calmly admits that it is true and asks if there is anything else. She then hears herself say more, repeating that he enjoys violence, shedding blood, and is cruel, adding that she was told he married her only to abuse her. As a result, the man stands and walks toward the window, saying he cannot deny having a violent side, but promising she will never see it. She then asks why, and he begins to answer, but his words fade as Enrica continues watching in shock. Just then, Kale's voice calling her name breaks through, and she suddenly opens her eyes again, returning to reality by the water, realizing she must have fallen into a trance. Immediately, Kale pulls her into a hug, relieved that she is safe and saying he thought he had lost her. However, she finds his reaction strange, although she also admits it hurts a little, and he quickly apologizes. Soon after, she asks where they are, and he explains that the strong current must have carried them far away from the hunting banquet area. Furthermore, he adds that although this is outside the planned area, it is not too bad since he and his knights know the forest well and can find their way back. However, before he can finish explaining what worries him next, Enrica suddenly shouts a warning, telling him to look behind him. At that moment, both of them react in shock, and Kale calmly states that it has appeared sooner than expected. In front of them, a monster emerges. The monster lets out a loud roar, and Kyle quickly reacts, wondering if he should thank it for making the search easier. As he moves in, Enrica notices another creature behind him and points it out just in time. Before anyone can react, the monster grabs her and he calls out in shock. In that tense moment, she thinks to herself that her breath is tight, and that a weak, half-trained light spell may not affect such a creature. As a result, she searches her memory for a way to survive. Meanwhile, her mind flashes back to her time with Vermont. In that memory, she sits across from him with a book open, while he insists that building a strong base in magic requires serious study. Even though she questions reading so much, he explains that monsters rarely live in dark, shaded places, and most of them are weak to light. He adds that light magic can still weaken monsters, even when the user is not strong. Back in the present, she recalls those words and focuses. As a result, she gathers what she learned and releases a burst of light magic toward the monster. Immediately, Kale, holding his sword, strikes the creature and quickly moves in to stop her from falling. He catches her safely and checks if she is hurt, while she thanks him and says she is fine. However, he insists she rest for a moment and moves on to finish the last enemy. Enrica watches as he skillfully cuts down a skeleton-like dragon monster, but just when it seems over, the head suddenly attacks again. In response, he blocks it with his arm, and the teeth sink into him, making Enrica scream and rush over. He throws the creature away while she asks if he is all right, noticing the wound. Although he says it is nothing, she blames herself, saying she should never have joined the hunt and that she only caused trouble. In response, he gently touches her face and tells her not to cry, explaining that he saved her so she would not look like that. She turns away and asks to see his arm, saying she learned a healing spell and might help. He agrees, even as he feels something strange in his body, and the situation settles into a tense calm after the fight. Kyle explains that the monster they just faced is the kind that eats Kirin berries and turns them into venom, and as a result, the poison is now spreading through his body. Enrica is surprised, but he quickly adds that Kirin berry poison is not harmful to humans. Instead, it works like a hallucinogen and is often used as a truth serum. In response, she feels a bit relieved, but at the same time worries when she hears what it can do. However, he calmly says that he has nothing to hide from her, so it should be fine. Meanwhile, both of them sit under a small shed, and she watches him closely as his body shakes more and more. In her mind, she wonders what to do, since even though he says it is not dangerous, he still looks worse. Because of that, she quickly steps in and gives him herbs she found, telling him to eat them since they have a cooling effect. Furthermore, she suggests that instead of forcing himself to stay awake, he should lie down and rest. Kale thanks her, but refuses, saying it is not an option because if he sleeps like this, he will start saying nonsense. In response, she insists that even if he says harsh or strange things, she will understand, since the poison is only a hallucinogen and not the real him, and therefore he must rest to recover properly without delay. Eventually, he lies down and holds her hand, asking her not to leave his side, even if he acts strange, because the forest at night can be dangerous. Enrica agrees and promises to stay with him. Soon after, he falls asleep and she lets out a sigh of relief, thinking in her mind that he has finally rested. However, she also feels sleepy and thinks she should close her eyes for just a moment. Before drifting off, she looks at him and wishes him to get well soon. Later in the night, she wakes up suddenly, confused about how long she has slept, but she is thrown into extreme shock when she sees him standing in front of her, pointing his sword at her. As a result, she quickly sits up and calls out his name in fear and confusion, still unable to understand what is happening. Why? Why are you doing this? Enrica asks in shock, but the one in front of her only responds with a cold question, asking who she is. She is stunned by those words and quickly tries to calm the situation, saying that this is not funny and calling it a bad joke. However, Kale keeps the sword pointed at her, and instead of backing down, repeats his question more harshly, insisting that he will ask only one more time. Because of that, she begins to feel real fear, and in her mind she wonders if this is the effect of the Kirin poison he mentioned, thinking it might be memory loss, even if it seems unlikely. As a result, she gathers her courage and introduces herself clearly as Enrica Wintersoar, his fiancé, even reminding him of the injury he got while saving her, asking if he truly remembers nothing. However, he denies everything immediately, calling her a liar and refusing to accept that he is engaged to her or that he saved her. Furthermore, he even suspects her identity, calling her a possible assassin and accusing her of kidnapping him and bringing him to a dark place. This leaves her completely shaken, and she quickly tries to reason with him by asking what exactly he remembers, even checking the date and his age. In response, he questions why she is treating him like a fool and says that he turned 18 this year. Hearing this, she becomes even more shocked and thinks deeply that this is not normal memory loss, but something far worse, as if he has gone back 4 years into the past and lost all those memories completely. Consequently, she tries to explain calmly, telling him that he is actually 22 years old and that they are in the hunting banquet forest, adding that he was poisoned by a monster that ate a Kirin fruit while saving her, which affected his memory. However, he does not believe her and demands proof, asking how she can prove she is truly his fiancée. Because of that, she becomes silent for a moment, thinking carefully about what to do. In her mind, she worries that mentioning his curse might make him see her as a spy, especially since he is known to be ruthless, and she fears she could lose her life if she says the wrong thing. Nevertheless, she steadies herself and speaks carefully, saying that love does not need proof, reminding him that he once gave her jewelry and dresses every day, and even gave her a room in his mansion before marriage. As a result, she insists that there is no way he would do such things for someone he did not love, hoping that these words will make him believe her. Kale responds that none of what she says exists in his memory, and as a result, he insists that there is no real proof she is his fiancée. Hearing this, Enrica realizes that all their shared memories have completely disappeared for him. Suddenly, he swings his sword toward her and coldly says that the story was at least entertaining, so he will grant her a painless death. In response, she quickly dodges, and the blade misses her completely. However, just then, lightning suddenly strikes from above and hits him instead. As a result, Kyle bends down while holding his chest, dropping his sword as he groans in pain. Enrica immediately rushes to him, asking if he's all right, and quickly checks him, saying he must still have poison in his system and that overusing his strength caused this collapse, so he should lean on her. Meanwhile, she notices in her mind how strange it is that just moments ago he tried to kill her, yet now he looks at her with concern. Then, he suddenly asks if she is truly his fiancée, and if she loves him too. Furthermore, he even asks if it is alright for him to kiss her. Because of that, she stays calm but thinks to herself that refusing would make him suspicious. So she agrees. As a result, they share a kiss, and she blushes deeply afterward. Kale then says that it seems true he has a fiancée, and adds that he has no more strength to deal with anything. So he lies back on the ground and says he needs to sleep. Enrica reacts in surprise, asking if he is really just going to sleep, and he calmly replies if she is disappointed. She denies it while thinking that this part of him feels just like before. Soon after, he falls asleep again, and she gently touches his head. In her mind, she reflects that although he was even joking earlier, his fever is not going down, and she wonders what she should do, especially if his memory never returns. However, she quickly shakes those thoughts away, telling herself she must focus on helping him recover. Just then, he opens his eyes slightly and says she is the first person to take care of him while he is sick. As the conversation continues, she asks about his life at 18, and he explains that he spent most of his time fighting siblings and vassals who wanted him dead, and that surviving means he must have taken control of the family somehow. In response, she tells him that he now lives in a very nice house and has gained wealth and honor. However, he replies that he is not interested in those things and only wants to know if he is strong enough to protect her. She answers that he is already her savior, and as a result, his eyes widen briefly before he says that if she is truly his fiancée and loves him, then she must stay by his side until the day he dies. After that, he rests his head on her shoulder and they continue talking for a long time, moving from serious topics about their present life to simple things like food, weather, and habits. Moreover, this younger version of him speaks in a blunt but somewhat naive way, unable to hide his feelings, which makes him strangely endearing. Eventually, he falls asleep again while she continues speaking softly. She then looks at him and lies closer, placing her hand on his chest and thinks that as long as she is with him, he will not die, and that he will break the curse soon and live much longer. In the morning, Enrica wakes up lying alone with Kale's clothes covering her. She slowly looks around in confusion, noticing that it is his clothing that has been placed over her. As a result, a worried thought forms in her mind, wondering if he is wandering in the forest while still under the poison's effect. Furthermore, the fear grows that something bad might happen to him, but she does not finish the thought before a voice calls out to her. It is Kyle, asking if she is awake. She quickly turns and sees him, and she notices he is speaking in a more formal and familiar honor style. Immediately, she rushes to him, hugs him tightly, and says she is so relieved that he is back, explaining how scared she was and how she feared he might never return to normal. In response, he apologizes for making her worry, still speaking more formally than usual. Enrica then asks if he remembers anything from the previous day. As they sit down together, he replies that he does not, and he also wonders if he said anything strange. At that moment, her mind flashes back to his words from the night before, especially when he said that if she truly is his fiancée and loves him, she is the only one for him and should stay by his side. However, she quickly hides her reaction and says he did not say anything strange at all, even adding that he seemed more like himself. Kale then lightly jokes that maybe he should eat 1 or 2 Quran berries before speaking with her, since it confirms she is really back. After that, he brings out a beast fang and gives it to her, explaining that he retrieved it that morning. Enrica questions why he went out just for that, and he explains that if it is shown to the royal family, they will likely hide the truth about the beast and call it a normal animal, like a tiger or wild boar. Consequently, they would name her the winner, give a large reward, and even hold a grand banquet in her honor, which would help strengthen her position in high society. Hearing this, she thinks to herself that he is willing to use the royal family's corruption and that he can be quite cunning like a fox. Still, she accepts the fang for now. Furthermore, he gives her something else, a raw mana stone he found on the way back, saying it helps with using magic. She thanks him and accepts it, and he encourages her to try using it. Enrica agrees, stands up, and focuses on her light magic just like before. Immediately, a powerful burst of magic is released, surprising her with how strong it is. Kale smiles and asks how it feels, and she replies that it definitely works, but she will need time to control it properly. She then looks at the mana stone and thinks it is surprisingly effective just to carry, deciding she must ask Vermont about it later. Meanwhile, far away, Vermont is also thinking about when she will return. Meanwhile, Martha rides a horse together with 2 other horsemen, and they soon stop at a place in the forest. She immediately asks if it is really true that her sister passed through that path, and one of the guards confirms it, saying that according to witnesses, she did. As a result, she begins to wonder why her sister would go so deep into the forest, but before she can think further, she notices something on the ground. It is the dead monster that has been killed. In shock, she questions why something like that is there, and who could have done it. In response, one of the guards explains that it was not a beast, but a monster, and judging from the cut, it must have been done by a highly skilled swordsman, with faint traces of magic also detected. Martha quickly asks if that means Enrica did it. But the guard warns that if news spreads about such a monster appearing in royal territory, it will cause chaos. And although he cannot say for sure, a mage was clearly involved. Hearing this, she thinks deeply to herself, trying to understand if her sister truly defeated it. Furthermore, a flashback appears from a few days ago at the Duke Winter's mansion, where the Duke stands by the window, angry, blaming Enrica for not sending any word after being married off to the Grand Duke and calling her useless for their family plans. Martha, standing nearby, hesitantly speaks up, saying that her sister was overworked and that anyone in her place would have wanted to leave too. Immediately, the Duke Winters becomes furious, questioning her loyalty and reminding her of the luxury she enjoys from his wealth, then placing a hand on her shoulder while ordering her to find out what her sister is doing and destroy it so she will return, crawling in shame. Because of that order, Martha is now in the forest, searching for Enrica. Back in the present, she continues her thoughts, deciding she does not want to do anything too cruel and only wants to humiliate her sister slightly. Just then, one of the guards points out footprints showing that whoever did this left without a horse and will take time to return. As a result, a plan forms in her mind, and she quickly tells the guard to take a bone fragment from the monster, preparing to act on her new idea. Enrica and Kale are walking together when she asks how far the campsite still is. He replies that they should arrive in about an hour and checks if she is feeling tired. In response, she touches her head and says it is only a little. Meanwhile, she looks up and notices a bird circling above her, and she wonders why it keeps moving around her like that. Kyle quickly identifies it as a carrier pigeon with a tracking spell and asks her to stretch out her arm. Enrica agrees and does so, and the bird lands on her arm. As she notices something tied to its feet, she wonders in her mind who could possibly send a letter this deep in the forest. Furthermore, she opens it and begins reading a message asking where she is, saying the sender is worried, signed with TD. Immediately, she connects the initials and thinks it must be Tristan Dyke because of the informal tone. The letter continues, explaining that he arrived and searched for her but found no trace, that he is worried something might have happened, and that her younger sister has returned to the campsite acting suspiciously. It also states that the sister brought back monster bone pieces, claiming she defeated a giant beast alone, and since the monsters were found in royal territory, the nobles are reacting strongly. It adds a strong feeling that she might be involved and urges her to return immediately if she reads it. Enrica is shocked by this, and meanwhile, Kale, who is removing leaves from her hair, asks who sent the letter. She answers that it is a friend, Tristan Dyke, and he narrows his eyes slightly, questioning when they became close enough to call each other by name. She gasps, but quickly insists. This is not the time for that and points out the letter, saying that Martha is taking credit for the monsters they defeated. In her mind, she realizes Martha must have followed her on purpose and is acting very openly, questioning how much she is being underestimated. Kale then says it seems true and that, at this rate, the victory will go to her sister, though he starts to add that if he goes with her and testifies, but he is cut off. Just then, Bacchus arrives from behind, calling out to Kale in relief and saying he has been searching for a long time and is glad both he and Enrica are safe. Enrica reacts happily at seeing him, but he quickly changes tone, warning that the adjutant says Kyle is already reaching his limit and must return immediately. However, Kyle dismisses it, saying he knows his body best and can hold on for another day. Standing between them, Enrica asks what he means by reaching his limit, while Bacchus tries to avoid explaining. Kale then states there is no need to hide it from her since she already knows about his curse. Bacchus finally explains directly that Kale is under a curse that left him without a heart, so he must regularly receive magic infusion into the empty space to survive. This is done by his adjutant, a mage, but the time between infusions has been shortening from 10 days to 7, then 3, and today is already the 3rd day, meaning it has become dangerous. Enrica is shocked, and Kale firmly refuses to go for infusion today, insisting he cannot repeat himself. She urges him to return immediately, asking why he is being so stubborn, but he explains that the process takes at least half a day, and if he is in the tent, she will face her sister alone. He refuses to let her go through it by herself. Enrica then becomes emotional and insists he is refusing treatment for that reason alone, saying she does not care about the hunting tournament and that what matters most to her is him. Enrica notices the expressions on both Kale and Bacchus and quickly softens her words, explaining that what she means is that his health is more important than Martha's schemes, and that she wants him to trust her and go for the magic infusion. In response, Kale agrees, saying it would not sit well with him to refuse after her heartfelt confession, and he decides to do as she says. Furthermore, he places a hand on her shoulder and reminds her to always have an escort, since she might run into wild beasts on the way back. Then he gives her a horse. Enrica accepts it and wonders if she has finally gotten through to him. She climbs onto the horse, and Bacchus directs her to keep riding straight to reach the campsite in about 10 minutes. She thanks him and says she hopes to see them later. Meanwhile, as Kale and Bacchus begin walking away, Bacchus says he will escort him to the tent immediately, but Kale stops him, saying there is something he needs to do first. Bacchus becomes confused and asks what it is, and Kale replies that it is hunting, since they must be prepared for any possible scenario. At the campsite, Enrica arrives and is seen walking with Hayden, and she explains everything that has happened, apologizing for making him worry. In response, Hayden says he is simply relieved that she is safe. She then asks about Martha, and he replies that things are complicated because the awards ceremony is about to begin, and the nobles are arguing over whether monsters should even count as valid prey. As they talk, Enrica notices Martha sitting with other noble ladies, and one of them praises her, saying she is incredible for taking down a monster with such a delicate frame and is sure to win the hunting competition. Martha reacts modestly, saying she is not even sure if the monster she caught will be counted as valid prey. Another noble immediately insists she should be the winner since she saved everyone, and another agrees, adding that if she is not awarded, they will protest to the royal family. However, one of them asks how she defeated the monster, since she is not known to use a sword. Martha quickly lies, saying she recently learned archery from her family and shot an arrow that shattered the monster's bones. On hearing this, Enrica becomes furious, clenching her fist as she thinks that Martha Wintersore is trying to steal credit with such a weak excuse. Then she asks Hayden when the awards ceremony begins, clearly deciding she will not stay silent any longer. Soon after the ceremony begins, and a moderator speaks to the crowd, thanking everyone for participating while explaining that a monster was found in the forest. It is announced that thanks to Martha Wintersore's brave efforts, it was dealt with successfully. Holding the award, the moderator declares her the winner of this year's hunting competition. Immediately, Enrica runs out from the crowd and shouts for them to wait. Martha is shocked to see her, and as Enrica reaches the front, she firmly objects to the decision. The moderator is shocked as he looks at the scene and questions what is happening. In response, Enrica steps forward and explains that she is sorry for interrupting the ceremony, but she has something important to say, as it concerns the honor of the royal family. Furthermore, she turns toward her sister and asks if there is anyone present who personally sees Lady Martha defeating the monster. Immediately, Martha is thrown into shock and yells at her, asking why she is doing this and whether she is jealous of her winning the title. However, Enrica calmly responds that it is not right to accept Lady Martha's claim without proof, and she insists that this is a serious matter. One noble standing beside Martha quickly objects, saying it is rude and that Lady Martha fought with great courage, adding that she even brought back a monster bone as proof. Enrica then requests that Martha show the bone fragment herself, but Martha refuses, saying she already showed it to the host and it was accepted. Meanwhile, Tristan Dyke, who is also in the gathering, steps in and politely asks Martha to present the bone fragment so the nobles can confirm her victory. Enrica is surprised to see him, while Martha finally agrees and brings it out. At the same time, Enrica also presents the monster fang given to her by Kyle. As both pieces are shown, Martha insists that this should be enough and demands an apology for being questioned. However, Enrica remains silent, then narrows her eyes and asks everyone to pay attention. She explains that Martha claims to have used a bow, but the monster's bones are as hard as steel, making it unlikely for an arrow to pierce them from a distance. This causes anger among the nobles, and Martha shouts again, accusing her sister of jealousy, while another noble defends Martha and insists the event must be fair above family ties. The moderator nervously watches, hoping the situation does not turn into a fight. Furthermore, Martha insists on her innocence, arguing that there is still no proof against her. In response, Enrica calmly states that she is the one who truly defeated the monster, because she is a mage. As soon as she uses light magic in front of everyone, the entire crowd falls into shock, including the nobles beside Martha. Whispering spreads that the eldest daughter of the Winterso family is a mage, even though many believed she stayed inside the mansion due to weak health. Finally, Enrica declares that she has a witness who can confirm everything and calls out to Tom to speak, and he agrees. 1 hour earlier at the campsite, Enrica meets Tom and asks for his testimony, carefully explaining that he should simply state that he saw her in the forest. In response, he agrees, but then questions whether he should also mention the commander who was with her. Meanwhile, she thinks to herself that if it becomes known that Kyle did not immediately report the monster attack, the royal family might use it against him. Although she does not deeply care about the consequences, she still tells him to leave that part out, since there is no reason to place the commander in danger. Tom understands and agrees. Back in the present, he walks forward into the center of the gathering and begins his statement, explaining that he was stationed inside the forest in the afternoon when 2 large monsters suddenly appeared. Although no one was harmed, he emphasizes that the situation was extremely dangerous, and that was when Enrica arrived. Immediately, a noble questions why the attack was not reported at once, and she thinks carefully, unable to openly say it was because the royal family would likely cover it up. Furthermore, considering Kale's position, she explains that revealing it could have caused even more chaos. Because of that, she chose to pursue and eliminate the monsters immediately instead. In addition, she explains that she used the light magic she demonstrated earlier to blind the monsters and then work together with a guard to defeat them. She presents the monster bone as proof and adds that, if anyone still doubts her, she is willing to have it checked by a high-ranking magician, since traces of her magic will surely remain. As a result of her explanation, one noble admits that there is no choice but to believe her, calling her claim credible. However, attention then turns back to Martha's accusation, and she becomes visibly terrified as the focus shifts. In response, Enrica instructs Hayden to bring what was prepared, while also raising her voice, questioning why only her sister is allowed to make claims without proof. No one responds, and Hayden returns with a bow and arrow, handing it over so Martha can demonstrate. Meanwhile, Enrica calmly states that she has already proven her power through magic and demands that the same standard be applied immediately. Martha panics and says she needs time to prepare, but Enrica firmly points out that there was no time to prepare in front of a monster. Consequently, murmurs spread through the crowd, with nobles beginning to doubt her ability, suggesting she may not even know how to shoot, and that her story might be false or stolen. Finally, Enrica steps closer and warns her sister that she should have expected this outcome, adding that there are things she refuses to let be taken from her, and if anyone tries, she will no longer remain silent. As the dispute continues, one noble standing beside Martha raises his voice in anger, insisting that she would never do something so shameless, although others begin to question whether everything actually lines up. Because of the rising tension, the award ceremony is suddenly postponed, and everyone is asked to leave and return later. After some time, the ceremony resumes. The moderator thanks everyone for their patience and announces that the award presentation will continue from where it stopped, calling those whose names are mentioned to step forward. In fourth place, Lady Sophia Faye Green is announced, having successfully hunted 1 deer, 1 fox, and 3 badgers. On hearing this, Enrica quietly reflects that this is expected of the female lead, since she has talent in unexpected areas. And although she once found her annoying in the novel, she now seems surprisingly cute. Meanwhile, Sophia whispers something to the moderator, which makes Enrica curious about what is being said. As a result, when she steps back down, the moderator announces that Sophia has made an unusual decision, offering all her hunted prey to Enrica. This causes a huge wave of shock across the entire crowd. Enrica recalls a past moment when the Marquis mentioned that Sophia had come looking for her, saying she wanted to meet her after being moved by her speech, and she begins to think that it was not a random act at all. Because of that, she wonders why Sophia likes her so much. Shortly after, the moderator continues and announces 3rd place, revealing Sir Tristan Dyke as the next name. As the former champion for 2 years, he is praised for his continued skill, and he is invited to say a few words. He steps onto the stage and admits he is disappointed with 3rd place, but he still offers respect to the true winner who fought bravely against the monsters. Following that, he dedicates all his hunted prey to Enrica. This leaves her stunned, as she wonders why he is doing the same thing and becomes aware of the intense stares from other contestants, which only adds to the tension in the hall. Meanwhile, the moderator moves on and announces that the runner-up will now be revealed, stating that this person has even surpassed last year's champion, Tristan. Enrica, hearing this, becomes curious and questions who could possibly be above him. Finally, it is announced that the 2nd place belongs to Duke Raphael Kronhart. Enrica falls into great shock as the announcement continues, stating that the 2nd place winner successfully hunted 5 wolves and 1 black panther. As a result, she immediately thinks that this means the Duke must be somewhere nearby, and she quickly looks around, yet she cannot find him. Meanwhile, the moderator continues and explains that due to personal reasons, he is not present at the ceremony, but he still wishes to make a surprising decision. Consequently, it is announced that he has also chosen to offer all his hunted prey to Enrica. This leaves her even more stunned, and she thinks to herself that Sophia and Tristan were already shocking enough, but now even the Duke has done the same. Furthermore, she recalls rejecting his public proposal and attending every banquet with Kael, which may have humiliated him, and she begins to wonder if this is some kind of threat or even a warning aimed at her. At the same time, whispers spread through the congregation as people react in disbelief, commenting that His Grace has confirmed the rumors that it was not a political agreement after all. The moderator then continues, stating that even if the monsters had not appeared, the outcome would have remained the same, and finally announces the winner of the event as Lady Enrica Wintersoar. Enrica walks up to the stage while questioning in her mind whether it is truly right to accept such victory that feels based on sheer luck. At the same time, the entire crowd applauds her, expressing gratitude and admiration, saying she has saved them and is truly amazing. In that moment, she is no longer seen as the Duke's fiancée or the sickly eldest daughter of a noble house, but simply as Enrica Wintersoar, the name now firmly engraved in everyone's memory for the first time. Immediately after, the moderator calls everyone forward for the award ceremony, and she steps up to receive her prize. When asked for a speech, she speaks calmly, stating that although she defeated the monster, she never did it alone, and she dedicates the honor to the knight who protected her and to her precious fiancé. Later, as others continue congratulating her and remarking on how romantic her speech sounds, she turns and notices Bacchus calling out to her. She quickly runs toward him and asks about Kael's condition. In response, he explains that this is exactly why he came back, urging her to go see the captain immediately. As a result, she rushes back and finds Kael lying in a shelter, while Bacchus explains that after returning and receiving mana infusion, he fell asleep and has not woken up since. Enrica then turns to him and asks why the infusion was delayed because of her, but he clarifies that it was completed within the expected time. Furthermore, Malua explains that the real issue is that his body is becoming increasingly vulnerable, and although his physical condition appears stable, they still do not understand why he remains unconscious. Because of that, since she is a magician, they hoped she might know something. In response, Enrica calmly states that, just as Manhwa suggests, she may actually know a way. Enrica tries to use her magic on the unconscious Kyle, yet nothing happens. And this instantly shocks Manhwa, who reacts in disbelief, asking how it is possible that it does not work at all. Because of that failure, Enrica quickly turns to Bacchus and requests a small dagger, also asking both of them to step outside the tent for a moment. Immediately, the two are stunned, trying to understand her intention, and in response, Manhwa warns her not to go any further, while confusion spreads between them as they jump to extreme ideas, thinking she might follow the commander into unconsciousness or even try to ease his pain from magical strain, especially since they assume the bond between them is deeper than expected. However, Enrica cuts off their thoughts firmly, insisting it is neither of those things, while inwardly wondering why their imaginations are so extreme. As a result, she pushes them outside, and although they plead with her not to do anything dangerous and to call them if anything goes wrong, she calmly takes the dagger from Bacchus and reassures them that it will only take a moment. Meanwhile, inside the tent with Kyle, Enrica holds the dagger and suddenly recalls what Vermont once told her, that she could summon him anywhere by making a small wound and drawing blood. Consequently, she concludes that a high-ranking demon like him might know how to wake Kale. Without hesitation, she presses the dagger into her palm and cuts it, enduring the pain as blood flows. Just then, Vermont appears immediately in his cat form, jumping near her face and reacting with concern, asking what happened, whether there was an ambush, and how much blood she has lost. In response, Enrica calls him Raymond and questions his dramatic reaction, reminding him that he was the one who instructed her to draw blood for summoning. However, he turns his face away and explains that he simply does not want any disruption in his mana supply, and then presses further, asking why she truly summoned him, even suggesting it might be about her fiancé lying nearby. Enrica then becomes serious and explains that Kale is weakening due to a curse, and even after receiving her mana infusion, he has not woken up. Therefore, she believes a great demon like him might know a solution. Hearing this, Vermont coughs slightly and reveals that freeing Kyle from that curse is also his master's goal, so he has already done research. Immediately after, he jumps onto Kyle's chest, still in cat form, causing Enrica to gasp in shock. Examining him closely, he confirms the curse is severe, and explains that Kale's manner is incompatible with the body, yet surprisingly that incompatibility might actually be helpful. Because of that, he clarifies that Kyle reacts more sensitively to her mana, meaning even a small amount could have a strong effect, like pressing on his chest with mana to shock him awake. Enrica reacts in surprise, questioning how she is supposed to do something like that. But before she can argue further, Vermont ends the summon and vanishes, leaving only his final instruction behind. As a result, Enrica is left alone, thinking there is no other option, and she decides to try it herself. Consequently, she places her hand on Kyle's chest and begins focusing her mana, attempting exactly what she was told, hoping that this unusual method might finally wake him. Immediately after Enrica applies the mana technique, Kale suddenly wakes up, and almost at once he starts teasing her, which causes her to jump back from the bed in surprise and protest that he is teasing her the moment he regains consciousness. In response, he quickly apologizes, yet still admits that her reaction was too cute for him to resist. And then, as if nothing serious had happened, he asks whether she truly won the hunting competition. Enrica, still recovering from the shock, confirms that she did, adding that it is all thanks to him and that because of it, she has finally gained wide recognition in high society. Furthermore, she promises that she will repay him for everything, saying he only needs to ask for anything he wants. For a moment, Kyle falls silent, thinking carefully, and then he makes an unexpected request, asking her to lie beside him. Immediately, Enrica reacts in shock, raising her voice in disbelief, but he calmly reminds her that she said he could ask for anything and assures her that he will not do anything strange, only asking her to stay beside him for a while. Although still nervous, she eventually agrees and lies down beside him. Meanwhile, she becomes visibly uneasy, yet inside her thoughts begin to spiral, realizing that even though this is not the first time they are this close, her heart still beats faster every time she sees his face, and just being near him makes her chest feel tight. As a result, she slowly starts questioning her feelings, wondering if she truly loves him. Trying to change the tension, Enrica asks whether the Grand Duke will attend the upcoming banquet for the champion. Kyle responds that he is not sure and asks why she is suddenly thinking about it. Consequently, she explains that the Grand Duke had earlier offered her a hunting gift, and although she does not fully understand his intentions, she has now gathered the courage to stop running away and face everything properly. Confused, he asks what she means by facing things, and she firmly replies that she will soon marry him. Therefore, she intends to tell the Grand Duke Kronhart that she can never marry him. Immediately after hearing this, Kyle pulls her into a tight hug, leaving her startled as she calls out to him, while he apologizes and asks her to let him stay like that a little longer. Furthermore, Kyle quietly expresses that he wishes these moments could last forever, And upon hearing this, Enrica softly responds that she feels the same. In that quiet exchange, both remain close, sharing a rare moment of honesty and warmth as the tension of everything around them fades for a brief time. Enrica wakes up in the morning and slowly opens her eyes, and as she looks around, she immediately realizes she is back in her room. Because of that, she wonders in her mind when she returned. At that moment, Sasha is already standing beside her and asks if she is awake. Enrica sits up and, still confused, questions when she fell asleep and how she got back to the mansion. In response, Sasha explains that she fell asleep in the captain's cabin and that she was carried back carefully so she would not be disturbed. As a result of hearing this, Enrica feels guilty and thinks to herself that she has burdened someone while he is still recovering, and she quietly decides she must reflect on her actions. Meanwhile, Sasha asks if she is hungry and mentions that food is already prepared and she can be escorted there. Enrica agrees, saying she feels a bit hungry and thanks her. And furthermore, while walking through the hallway toward the dining area, Enrica meets maids and servants who warmly greet her, welcoming her back and congratulating her on her victory, saying they are glad she is safe and that she must have gone through a lot. As she hears all of this, she reflects in her mind that in the Wintersour's mansion, no one ever cared whether she came or went. Yet now being welcomed like this makes her feel like she truly belongs. However, she suddenly notices that Sarah is missing, which is unusual since she normally appears first. Because of that, she asks Sasha about her, and Sasha responds that she has not seen her since returning to the mansion. Immediately, Enrica becomes alarmed and runs off, apologizing and saying she will eat later, while Sasha calls after her but cannot stop her. Enrica quickly reaches Sarah's room and opens the door, calling out, but there is no answer. Consequently, she thinks to herself that the maid is not anywhere, and wonders where she could have gone without saying anything. As she moves further inside the mansion, she eventually finds her in another room. There, Sarah is packing her luggage, and when she turns and sees Enrica, she immediately tells her not to come closer. Enrica notices her appearance and thinks that her hair is messy and her face is pale, which is unlike her usual self, and because of that, she grows even more worried and asks what is happening. In response, Sarah states that she has decided to leave the mansion today and asks not to be stopped. This shocks Enrica, and she demands to know why she is leaving so suddenly without explaining anything. At that moment, Sarah clenches her fists and admits she has been hiding something. Enrica, still trying to stay calm, tells her she will not be angry and asks her to explain. Then Sarah reveals that she is a dark mage. As a result, Enrica is surprised, but internally thinks it is not shocking, although she wonders why this is coming out so suddenly now and whether something happened while she was away at the Count's estate that forced her to hide it for so long. Meanwhile, Sarah continues, lowering her head and saying she is sorry for running away, and that Enrica must be disappointed in her. She prepares to leave again, but Enrica immediately tells her to wait. At the same time, Enrica's thoughts begin to race, and she realizes that if Sarah, who is known as the villainess in the original story, leaves now, it might actually change the future in a positive way by preventing her involvement with the Duke, her original love interest. However, despite that reasoning, she still stands frozen as Sarah continues to try to walk away. A flashback suddenly crosses Enrica's mind, and it takes her back to the Winters mansion, inside her room. In that memory, she is sitting up on the bed, still troubled, when Sarah walks in and notices her state, asking if it is another nightmare. Enrica, surprised by how quickly she appeared, looks up and asks how she knew to come. In response, the maid calmly says she simply had a feeling and that she knows everything about her, then gently tells her to lie down so she can stay until she falls asleep. As a result, Enrica feels a bit relieved, but also guilty, and she apologizes for always troubling her. However, she is quickly reassured, as the maid says there is nothing to apologize for and wishes her sweet dreams, staying by her side in that quiet moment. Back in the present, Enrica is still lost in thought, and she reflects in her mind that even though she may have been the villain in the original story, in her memories, Sarah has always been kind. Meanwhile, Sarah is still preparing to leave, but before she can move any further, Enrica suddenly rushes forward and hugs her from behind, urgently asking her not to go. In response, the maid tries to explain that she has to leave, but Enrica interrupts her and reveals that she already knows she is a dark mage, adding that she is known from the very beginning. Because of this confession, Sarah slowly calms down, and the tension between them begins to ease. After that, both of them sit down together to talk properly. Sarah, still uncertain, asks when she realized the truth, and Enrica replies casually that she is also a mage and that she may act clueless, but she is not that dense. However, in her mind, she already knows the truth comes from what she read in the novel, where the identity was revealed long before. As a result, Sarah becomes emotional and asks if she is not angry, admitting she has been lying the entire time. In response, Enrica firmly says that her being a dark mage does not matter at all, and that she has cared for her more than anyone else, even if she were the Demon King. She adds that even if she were not a dark mage, her feelings would remain the same. Immediately after hearing this, Sarah is overwhelmed and pulls her into a tight hug, confessing that she no longer wants to hide anything, and that she will explain everything, including the reason she became a dark mage. Enjoying this so far? Comment villain below for part 3. Until next time, ciao!